Afternoon. Tension on deck.
Hey, what's going on, Ron? What are you doing, man? Listen. Last show we said NYPD ready or not. That was the last show. I guess they answered their own question, right? And this show is the NYPD got lucky. Wow, a lot to talk about, man. So, hey, the first things first, though. How's the missus doing?
Everybody's good. Everybody's good. Thank you.
All right, good.
Yeah, everybody's good. Yeah, last week we talked about NYPD being on high alert and whether they were ready or not with the conflicts in the Middle East. And even though I don't think that this incident that we had over the weekend is directly related to those things, because it's probably being planned and put together prior to the interaction with Iran, but it's right in line with what we talked about being on high alert and whether or not the NYPD was prepared. So we're going to get into that in a minute, but first, we want to just pay tribute to police officer Sorfli Davius. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, and forgive me if I'm not. Active member of the 79 precinct, who was deployed in Kuwait in support of Operation Epic Fury, and he passed away while in Kuwait due to a medical emergency. So, prayers to Officer Davius's family, to those members in the 79 precinct, and his fellow military warriors as well. So just want to start off with that.
Yeah, well, hopefully the job takes care of his family. I mean, they did for Joseph Lem. I know that was a different set of circumstances where he died from a suicide bomber. But hopefully the police department will take care of his family like they've done in the past.
Yeah, I'm not sure how exactly that works.
Well, I think with Lem that was O'Neill, I believe, designated as like a line of duty type of thing. But I was unprecedented. I think that was the first time that that's ever been done. So, but
yeah. So driver's seat started out. They got very lucky. How on earth were two teenagers able to go undetected, especially at a time when New York City's on high alert? We'll get into that. We'll give our perspective on that. There's a lot of information out there. There is a lot of discussions going on back and forth about this incident, about the response from the NYPD, about the response from our elected leaders, our executive leadership of the NYPD. And I think we're gonna delve into a lot of that tonight and give our perspective from all of our time on the job. We're gonna look at a lot of video tonight. I got a lot of video queued up for tonight, different angles of the attack and different things, and some press conferences that we're gonna discuss what was spoken about, who was present, who wasn't present, and we're gonna get into that. We're also gonna discuss the preparedness, right? We started talking about that last week. We've been talking about it. We've talked about it in the past. The entire Finest Unfiltered network has spoken about the NYPD's preparedness for terrorist attacks, as well as just all of these First Amendment activities, right? What we call protests or mini riots that they turn out to be. And the way that the NYPD polices them since 2023 has drastically changed due to the protest settlement agreement that was signed by Mayor Adams that binds the NYPD on a four-tier system on how they are allowed to police these events. And we've talked about it in the past. We've had episodes about it. John and Eric and Marlon have spoken about it at length as well. How we feel that the way they're being policed today is not conducive to proper public order. And the way I described it in a post that I had put out is that we're allowing the protesters to control the streets, and we're not controlling the streets. And the NYPD has kind of lost control of it. And a lot of it has to do with this protest settlement agreement. So we're going to get into the protest settlement agreement a little bit, give people that aren't familiar with it some background on it, the red light, green light for enforcement activity, when the cops are allowed to take independent action, when they need executives to give authority, make arrests, even though they have probable cause that offenses are being committed right in front of them. So we'll get into that as well, because I think that comes into play without a doubt as to how we've lost control, and we're going to show how this protest / counter protest, albeit wasn't huge, wasn't as big as a lot of others. There was a lot of anticipation. There was a lot of hype, and there was intelligence that there was going to be violence. So how the NYPD handled it leading up to the attack, could it have been controlled better? Could it have been controlled differently with different assets? And, would that have made a difference? And I don't know.
You want to bring up the protest agreement then, or?
All right, sure. Well, let's talk about the red light and green light offenses, right? So this is where officers that are assigned to these First Amendment activities, we're going to refer to them as First Amendment activities because that's how it's written in here, but we're talking about protests, right? We're talking about protests, we're talking about counter-protests. We've talked about it, again, at length. We've talked about the protest settlement agreement in the past. We had Tony Raganella, former disorder control CO and SRG, on the show in the past to help walk us through it a little better because of his, he has a little more intimate knowledge of it. And we've talked about it as recent as the incident in the synagogue on what we think the way things should have been set up with protest, counter-protest pens to keep people away from each other so as to not have conflict the way we do. So the chat, please bear with me today. There's a lot of stuff in the background today with graphics and with production. So I'm going to try and keep up. But so let's talk about the red light offenses, are those that require approval, right, of someone at the rank of captain or above before an officer may make an authorized arrest. And this just, to any cop, just blows your mind. All right, the following offenses shall be red light offenses. Again, you need a captain or above to tell you you're allowed to make an arrest. Riot, incitement to riot, nonviolent obstructing of governmental administration, violation of emergency orders, disorderly conduct, trespass, criminal mischief, right? Property destruction in the 3rd and 4th degree, vehicle and traffic laws of basically obstructing traffic, unlawful assembly, and any offense not designated as a red light offense shall be a green light offense. So if there's a crime that's committed that's worse than any of those, then a cop can make an arrest, right? So the members of the service shall not conduct an arrest unless there's an individualized probable cause as currently defined in NYPD policy to believe that the person has committed a green light offense. Again, one of those not listed above, or an authorized by a captain or above red light offense. That means that the NYPD member of the service may not arrest any person, unless the member has sufficient objective facts based on the member's own personal knowledge or reliable and trustworthy information provided by other members or third parties to establish probable cause the person engaged in unlawful acts that aren't listed above. So when you hear that, what comes to mind right away?
No, it's mind blowing. You're handcuffing a police officers unbelievably. I mean, how do you do that? You know, I remember when Alvin Bragg got into office, there was a list of crimes that he literally sent down to his assistant district attorneys that would not be prosecuted by the DA's office. And here you have things that are happening in your presence based on the criminal procedure law, your penal law, and your authority to make arrests. Right? We all learn that in the police academy, right? When can you make an arrest? You know, they talked about, you know, within your geographical area of employment, right? Which is the 5 boroughs for New York City police officers. And then you can make arrests throughout the state as well, depending on the level of the crime, right? Felony, anywhere in the state, you know, misdemeanors, same thing. You're not allowed to follow for misdemeanors, and then violations, right? You could only do violations within the geographical area of employment, but you can pursue to adjoining counties. So you couldn't follow somebody all the way up to Orange County because it's not an adjoining county. But anyway, that being said, is you think about that, police officers, let's go out and then we're gonna police this event, and things get out of hand. And first of all, I mean, let's be perfectly honest, right? I've been on details. I've been on these things. Where are most of the bosses, right? They're all in the THV. They're all hanging out, drinking coffee. Hey, you know, and the poor police officer are out there. So can you imagine being a police officer out there and the shit's hitting the fan, and you got to turn around and look and see and look for somebody with two bars on their shoulder. Not Ronnie Two Bars, because Ronnie Two Bars would be out there, but somebody out there and you know, on this, where's the captain? I got to authorize my arrest. I mean, it's mind blowing. It's ridiculous. It definitely handcuffs the cops.
And again, it's also a training issue. You know, they're mandating First Amendment activity training for all police officers because, you know, they don't want to violate this agreement that's been put into place. And, you know, are the cops really properly trained for this? Are the supervisors properly trained for this? You see on all of these protests, right? These First Amendment activities, video after video after video online of just utter chaos when they do go to make an arrest because of a green light offense, right? An assault or something higher than the criminal mischief in the 3rd degree, or the non-violent obstructing of governmental administration, right? Now I'm going to show a video in a little while, you know, of a non-violent obstructing government administration that could be construed as violent because of physical contact, right? But again, the cops have to have the knowledge of exactly what these laws are so they can effect arrests when necessary. And the stipulations in the tiered system of what the response can be, of what the, you know, deployment is for these agreements we're going to get into. And then it's up to the upper echelon to decide when they're going to move to the next level. And I think we're going to demonstrate today that with Chief Edwards, who was the commanding officer, 2-star chief of Manhattan North, was absolutely front and center. He was all throughout the demonstration prior to the IEDs being thrown. He was absolutely, as everybody has seen on social media, front and center during when the perp, and I don't like to even name them, so I'm not even going to say their names tonight, who these 2 perps are. But when that perp threw the second IED right at basically the sergeant and Chief Edwards, so he was front and center. But he was also front and center earlier, escorting this miscreant Jake Lang, who was there to, you know, protest the Islamification of New York City and Mayor Mamdani. Which, listen, as vile and as disgusting as it is, we've talked about that in the past too, right? People have their First Amendment right. Speech can be disgusting, but it's still legal for them to have the right to go out and say these disgusting and vile things. But when we get into the protest settlement agreement, I think, I think we'll be able to demonstrate that, things could have been, levels could have been raised and additional appropriate resources brought in to control the scene a little bit better prior to the chaos that ensued.
Well, if you're front and center, like you're saying that he was, then it should have been, right? If you're evaluating everything as we go along, I don't know at what point do you waiting for anything to happen? You need to bring it up. I think the problem is a lot of the supervisors, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about like the captains and above, are afraid to elevate it to that point. They're afraid they're going to get ridiculed. They're afraid they're going to be told, "What did you do that for?" If you bring SRG in like you're allowed to do, and we'll talk about it, then everybody's going to be criticized. If nothing happens, and the perception is I brought them in because I felt that this was going to happen, they're going to criticize you. So that's where I have a bit of a problem with that, where they're almost afraid to bring them in, for fear of criticism and retaliation.
It's like we talk about with everything from every part of policing, right? Is proper training and the ability to articulate. People have lost that ability to articulate why they're doing what they're doing. You should be able to, and you need to be able to articulate why you're doing the things that you do, that you have the legal right to do. Now, the protest settlement agreement is very restrictive. It's very binding. It makes no sense. It makes the police department completely reactionary to the protests, to the First Amendment activity participants, right, who turn into riotous miscreants out there. And then we have to react afterwards instead of maintaining public order and maintaining control of the streets and maintaining safety and security for the people that are there to, exercise their First Amendment right. And they aren't just paid agitators and whatnot that are embedded into these protests. So and also the general public. But the protest settlement agreement really restricts how you have to, prepare for these events. And, we don't agree, with a lot of things. But, again, like everything else, you have to follow the law, right? But there needs to be more pushback. There needs to be more of people with the voices, the elected officials, the upper echelon of the police department. Like we say, it should be apolitical, but also needs to speak up for public safety, because that is our main edict, is public safety. So let's look at the tiers of the protest settlement agreement and where it allows the police department in preparation and execution of a First Amendment activity. Right? So here in tier 1, right? This applies presumptively to all First Amendment activities unless something else happens that bumps it up, right? The NYPD shall only deploy police officers in the tier as described below. So for tier 1, right, it's got to be selected from the Community Affairs Bureau and consistent with, pursuant to the mission of the Community Affairs Bureau, to strengthen relationships, community, and build trust, right? These officers focus on communicating with the protesters, understanding the aims of protest organizers, communicating with protesters about how officers can facilitate those aims. So how can we help you, right? Circumstances which they cannot, and explaining to the protesters any police action that is anticipated, imminent, or undertaken to the extent identifiable. Officers should have this dialogue with the protest leader Problem is, hardly ever know who the protest leaders are, right? It's all done behind the scene. If not identifiables, they should attempt outreach to multiple protesters among the crowd, right? The officers have to wear their powder blues, right? The Community Affairs Bureau with their names displayed and shield numbers and their command. Now, here's one of the things that just automatically, to me, it just sets me off, right? Where a First Amendment activity temporarily blocks vehicular and pedestrian traffic or otherwise obstructs public streets or sidewalks, the NYPD shall, whenever possible, accommodate the demonstration, and when necessary, deploy patrol officers to reroute vehicular and pedestrian traffic. So move everybody around and give them the streets. These officers shall not be drawn from the SRG and shall not carry any equipment associated exclusively with those units, such as flex cuffs, right? Or if, when the demonstration gets so large, in such a manner obstructs access to critical infrastructure like highways, bridges, tunnels, railways, subways, schools, hospitals, or rerouting vehicular and pedestrian traffic is not adequate to address the obstruction, the NYPD may use the above measures to serve to direct the FAA, the First Amendment activity, to another route or location. Before doing so, protest liaisons, right, who are, again, community affairs, shall endeavor to negotiate an alternative route. So we have to pander to them. All officers shall refrain from engaging in any enforcement activity unless it conforms with the NYPD's red light, green light policy. So basically, what is it telling us? We're giving them the streets.
Yeah, well, they're taking the streets because you ever try to, during a demonstration, try to tell the demonstrators that they can't go down a particular block? It doesn't happen. They just take over the street no matter what, because there is a lack of people and a lack of direction. You know, putting the poor community affairs officers. I hope they're getting. You know, the strategic response group training on how to, you know, help and push a crowd around, because that's all they're doing now. And you see, more often than not, those are the guys that are doing stuff, making arrests, doing everything else. So I don't know if that powdered blue shirt is really working as, you know, I'm sorry police, they used to call them also. You know, is that really helping? I don't know. They're becoming the ones that are now taking over the responsibility that SRG did, while SRG is sitting in the background somewhere far away, hidden, so they can't be seen and they can't be subjected to, oh my God, look, the SRG guys are out here, and they're not supposed to be because of the agreement. It's terrible.
Well, we see them getting involved because they're the front line, right? So you have all these community affairs officers that are there, and they're walking with the protesters and trying to tell them, oh, we can't go this way. Like, where in New York City are we taking over streets that it's not going to be conducive, where you can reroute traffic? The amount of resources it takes to reroute traffic when you close down a major roadway, no matter what roadway it is, if you're going up and down, you know, an avenue, a major avenue, Fifth Avenue, Broadway, anywhere, the cross streets intersect. So you have to go to the peripherals, right? Block off all the streets so that cars can't get through, because you have to give them the street. And they take the street. They don't just take the sidewalk. So it's not feasible. And again, it becomes where they take over. They know they have control. And again, by time we try to move in, ask them to move and go a different route, they laugh at you. These are our streets. Whose streets? Our streets. Whose streets? Our streets. Right? That's what they all chant. They're not going to move. They're not going to change their route when they have something in mind that they want to do. So this is a problem. And it just makes no sense. But that's tier 1, right? So let's move on to tier 2, right? The NYPD may begin, act, or move to tier 2 if the incident commander, in consultation with the FAA, the First Amendment Activity Senior Executive, reasonably believes that green light violations are imminent, which are the more serious crimes, but have not yet occurred, or that First Amendment is so large or occurs in such a manner that it creates a risk of obstructing access to critical infrastructure. Again, highways, bridges, tunnels, railways, subways, schools, hospitals, such that it is reasonably anticipated that the deployment of additional officers may become necessary, and the risk of obstructing access cannot be relieved by directing individuals to alternative entrances and exits of the critical infrastructure. Again, we're going to ask them to move. They're not going to move. So right here, it's giving the senior executive, right, the incident commander, whoever's in charge of the detail, in consultation with whatever chief is designated as the senior executive, the right to begin at tier 2. Because you can very easily articulate that they're taking over the streets, they're going to take over the streets, and they're not going to listen and they're not going to move, because we know that from all prior history.
I'm reading this as the guy that's from the other side there, the one that's doing the protesting from the agreement, the FAA. He's making a decision with the incident commander. Is that how I'm reading that? Is that right? The FAA senior executive? Who is the FAA senior executive? That's not the incident commander.
That's a chief in the NYPD. The freedom, the First Amendment Activity Senior Executive is a senior executive in the NYPD in chief. So the incident commander is probably an inspector, right, in charge of the detail, right? Or it may even be a 1-star chief, depending on the size of it. And then, whether it's a 2-star chief or whoever, the senior executive is an NYPD senior executive that they're talking about. They're not talking about someone in the protest.
Well, I mean, either way, it's ridiculous that, unless there's the senior executives out there with them, because that you're making a game day decision, and this incident, the incident commander, if you follow SIMS, the Citywide Incident Management System, and you tell somebody that they're the incident commander, they have all the authority and power to do what they're supposed to do to make that incident. They are in charge. All right. There's with the fire department, sometimes there's a unified command, but if it's a single incident command, like it is for a demonstration, the incident commander who's designated is the one that's in charge. So this completely violates the citywide incident management system as well. So it's just obscure. That whole thing is ridiculous.
No, it is. It doesn't coincide with department policy and procedures that have been put into effect and have been tweaked and upgraded, and since 9/11 and since other incidences that forced us to look back, reflect, and say, what did we do wrong and what can we do better? Which is what we do all the time, right? About Monday morning quarterbacking, right? The hot wash that you always talk about after an emergency services situation, right? Let's look at what we did, what we can do better, what we did good that we can expand on, and what we did that didn't work so well that we can do better next time, right? So in tier 2, right, the NYPD can station additional officers nearby, but off the scene, and to the extent possible, completely out of the view of protesters. And they will only be deployed if tier 3 or tier 4 is authorized, right? So, but there's a presumption against stationing officers on the scene. Here's the caveat. Once again, if in the event that the incident commander reasonably believes that there is a threat of major property damage and or violence, and this is where I'm going to say that we're able to right here articulate in the situation of Saturday's event you could absolutely articulate that there was reasonable belief that there's a threat of violence, because there was a threat of violence against Jack Lang, or whatever his name is, right? And the incident commander reasonably believes that the stationing of additional resources on scene would deter the threat of property damage and/or violence. The incident commander may station limited resources on scene for that purpose. The resources deployed shall be proportional and no more than necessary to address the imminent threat. So, again, bring in what you need to bring in. So, right there, there's ways around this protest settlement agreement, but like you said, you got to have the balls to do it, to make the call, to be the boss, and to articulate why you made the call. And the problem is on when you make those calls and you prevent the violence, you prevent the property damage, you prevent things from becoming chaotic, or as we'll hear Commissioner Tisch say, get interesting, right? Then you get called out. Then you get called out as to, well, why did you bring them in? Why? You went against the protest settlement agreement. Well, yeah, because I perceived that there was a danger of imminent threats of violence. So I brought in the resources to prevent it. That's into tier 2, right? We're still not even talking about SRG, unfortunately. We're talking about bringing in patrol resources, right? Because the NYPD in tier 3 may begin at or move to tier 3 if there is individualized probable cause to arrest individuals who are engaged in green light offenses, again, those bad ones, or authorized red light offenses, which means a captain or above is saying, I'm not putting up with this shit. We're not going to go with this obstructing governmental administration and let them run the streets. We're going to run the streets. And if you're going to OGA, we're going to lock you up. Okay? Arrests in tier 3 shall be guided by the NYPD's red light, green light policy, right? And relevant patrol guide procedures, right? So the incident commander must authorize the implementation of tier 3. Once again, use your discretion, be able to articulate it, right? So the NYPD may deploy an appropriate number of officers sufficient to address the specific individuals engaged in green light offenses or authorized red lights, right? If applicable, when officers are employing a targeted approach to address the specific individuals among the crowd, protest liaisons, there's our community affairs again, and patrol deployed to address traffic concerns should continue to facilitate and let the crowd move on. So as you're collaring people, let the protest continue. But we all know, right, that that's not the case. Once you start arresting somebody, the protest stops and everybody just crowds around. That's when you really need your SRG to come in. And we're going to show in a video how when the police are being overwhelmed, that the officers don't really respond in a trained order, public order control measure like SRG is specializing in, forming lines, forming wedges, having the ability to hold back a crowd, to move a crowd safely and give a safety zone to the other officers or participants. But we don't have that, right? So where the use of specialized formations and or equipment is deemed necessary by a FAA senior executive. So now we're back past the incident commander, back to that senior executive to address specific individuals engaged in green light offenses or authorized red light offenses, and in a manner consistent with ensuring safety and continuity with the First Amendment activity, which means, we got to let them keep going. We got to make sure now SRG may be deployed in tier 3. So you have to bump it all the way to tier 3 in order to bring SRG in. And these limited resources shall only be deployed for as long as necessary to address the condition that they were deployed to address. Right? So again, it's here. It's on paper. When you put your plan together, it has to reflect the protest settlement agreement. But there are ways to articulate and allow the police to still be the police.
Yeah, so if you take it back, like, I don't know when I worked in the borough, the Bronx borough, I was platoon, I was the admin lieutenant for the borough. And in the borough, we had the operations section, not to be confused with the operations that's downtown. This one's in the borough, and they set up all the details. And all the details is you see, all right, what's happening? How are we going to show our response? How are we going to, steer the protest? How many people we're going to, how many personnel, manpower, vehicles, how's going to be escorted, all the logistics that are necessary. And they put that all together. And what that does, that goes to either the XO or the CO of the borough for final authorization. And to me, it seems like this information, just like you had just mentioned, there's ways around it. There's ways to deploy things. There's ways to set things up. The SRG was put on alert many, many times for different types of details. We would get it down through roll call, the strategic response group on alert. We want you in this particular area for a demonstration or for, some other type of incident. So here is, in my opinion, is a failure of the executive level in the borough, that they didn't foresee the problems. They downgraded what they thought was going to happen, and it erupted. And then again, it wasn't really policed properly from what I've seen. But the patrol borough commanding officer, Chief Edwards, either himself or his XO, should have looked at the plans, realized what was going on within this demonstration, and appropriately adjusted it for the expected or anticipated violence that could have happened. Right. And to me, that was a complete failure.
So I agree with you. I agree with you. And, John McCarry from finest, New York's finest retired unfiltered podcast with Eric Dim, Marlon, Bethel, who's on the chat also, saying Chief Edwards had the authority to staff that protest properly, and he failed. That's what we're talking about, right? And he's saying that the failure exposed how flawed the agreement is. And that's what we're getting at. And that's why I'm bringing these things up. I'm showing that even though the agreement is there, so people are blaming the agreement, and people are saying that, well, you can't do this. You can only use community affairs because that's what the protest settlement agreement says. And yes, the protest settlement agreement says that we got to put community affairs out there as the front line. We all know that is flawed. We all know that that's not an appropriate response, and that we do not control the streets because they are not the appropriate people. There is a place for community affairs when preparing for a detail. You worked in the borough, you know it. I worked in the borough. I worked in a command that had a zillion details every year in the 110 precinct with Flushing Meadows, Corona Park, and also once we had some homeless shelters moved in. There were a lot of demonstrations. We had to put these together, and my community affairs were integral with the preparation, because they would make contact with the people in charge. But we knew who the people were in charge of these protests or these details were going to be. Big problem with these details and with these First Amendment activities is you don't know who to contact. You don't know who the contact person is. You don't know who the leaders are, so you cannot coordinate. And then once they're on the scene, they're not going to identify themselves, right? Even though we see the same people at all these different details, right? So it doesn't work. You can't have community affairs out there as your front line of defense. And that's what this protest settlement says. But what I think that we are exposing here, like John says, the failure exposes how flawed the agreement is. There are ways to articulate bringing in proper resources. So with the knowledge of this specific detail and the knowledge that there were threats of violence against Lang, right, who is an absolute provocateur, who's going out there and having an an Islamophobic, anti-Islamification of New York City protest, you can bump this up to get a lot more uniform members of the service into that detail from the very start, watering down your community affairs layer. You still have SRG on the outskirts, but we're going to show in a little bit, right? So, the way we're going to do it is we're going to talk about this, then we're going to show the attack, go over the videos of the actual attack, and then talk about the response. But we're going to show that here, what I'm going to show next is there was chaos leading up to, prior to the IEDs being thrown, where I believe, and I think you agree that, and I know John agrees, that Chief Edwards, who is an FAA senior executive, right? He's a 2-star chief. He's the bigwig. He's the guy. He's the number one guy that's out there. He's the borough commander. Could have easily articulated that there is an imminent threat of violence, and we need to bring in people for specialty deployment of special formations in order to keep order and prevent violence. And we're going to show that.
Well, hold on. I'm going to also tell you that. First of all, I love what TC says. He says, "Put SRG in sunglasses and fake mustaches. No one know it's them." I said in a previous, I think, text between us, I said, put them in the powder blue shirts. And nobody will know it's really SRG. They'll think it's community affairs. But what I'll tell you also happens is there every week. I think there was 2 PC briefings a week, whatever PC briefings there were. Every week, there's a sheet that comes down from operations. That's the operations downtown now. That gives you a listing of all the events that are going on in the city. Every single event. And that goes to the highest level. So you're talking about operations going to give that, and that's going to go to the chief of department, to the police commissioner. So I'm going to go even as far as to say that Jessica Tisch, Michael LaPetri, they all knew about this event, okay? And the decision to not staff it with additional personnel. Now, when you talk about additional personnel, yeah, you could put more community affairs, but you could put more cops on the side. All right, keep your SRG to the side, but you know how you used to have on a parade, you have 2 or 3 people on each block. Put a 1 and 8 on each block, 1 on 8 on each side, since there's going to be some sort of, there could be a potential for violence. So I'm telling you that this sheet, and we used to get it. We used to get it in the special operations division because my boss was a 3-star chief. So he would get that information. So we would know, and you knew every event, however big and however small. And all of those events were also, vetted through intel. And I'm sure we'll talk about it, but this was a complete and utter failure, not only at the borough level from Edwards and his initial deployment and what he was going to do, but at the highest executive level within the police department, the chief of department and the police commissioner, who sit in those briefings. The PC runs the briefing, knows what event they now I can't speak for what's happening now, but in the past when I was there, they read what was going on and what type of deployments there were. In fact, on that sheet, it showed what the thing was. If it was a small event, it was a 1 in 8, right? That means one sergeant, 8 police officers. Bigger events, it was different. Okay. And then it was SRG on alert or whatever, like I mentioned earlier. So those sheets are out there. So I'm telling you that at the highest level, this was a misstep. This was misguided, and it could be the reason why she's not really, condemning this. What we're talking about, right? This settlement agreement, because she should have done exactly like you just said. She should have stepped that up. All right. And first of all, it falls on Edwards to say, I need to step this up. And then it falls on LaPetri to say, you know what, Commissioner, we better do this. And it says, Commissioner, we better do this. And if she's got to go to the mayor and say, listen, we got to do this, otherwise this is going to happen, then she should have done that. So
Well,
I think it's an epic failure.
Well, I look at the comment from JDP 0704. There's G6C. You know, it's a YouTube jumble. You know, I don't. You know, unless you were there or ever an incident commander, have been. So is Rob. At one of these demos, you would know that these demos are extremely fluid. Aaron Edwards did not intentionally downplay this detail. We're not saying that Aaron Edwards downplayed this detail. There were a lot of cops at this detail. What we are saying, I think we're in agreement. What we're saying is that there was the ability to articulate upgrading, not downplaying. And I'm not saying he did downgrade or downplay, but there were opportunities for him to articulate within the settlement agreement to upgrade to a higher tier to bring in more resources and appropriate resources such as the SRG because of his personal knowledge from the intelligence of a threat of violence right there alone, right? And then you have actors who we're going to show were threatening violence, who were committing green light offenses that should have been designated as green light offenses and authority should have been given to make arrests and bring in the SRG to take control. That's what we're saying. So we're not saying that he downplayed anything intentionally. We're saying that he and the police department are handcuffed at the onset by the settlement agreement. Nobody denies that. The settlement agreement, we don't agree with. We don't think it should have ever been signed on by Eric Adams and Commissioner Caban at the time. We think that it is flawed. We think that it's been shown time and time again since 2023 that it's flawed. I think that this incident here has to be, like I said in the description, an eye opener. This has to be an eye opener, and they have to look at this not as a success. We were lucky, not as a success. Look at what went wrong and try to implement change to prevent things from happening in the future. Whether or not these two individuals could have gotten into the protest area and detonated those devices anyway is another question. However, having control and the police being in control is a deterrent. We've known from intelligence in the past, right, that we're not, chatter that's been intercepted, that when the police are properly deployed and resources are properly out there, it's too hot and they're not going to do things. So maybe if this scene was controlled better, these two individuals wouldn't have been able to move as freely, maybe encountered police prior to the detonation or whatever the case may be. That's what we're saying. But just before, let's just finish out the protest settlement agreement because we're already 49 minutes in and we didn't even get to the incident yet, right? So basically, tier 4 is basically shit hits the fan, bring everybody in. And that's what basically, unfortunately, right, that's what unfortunately we look at and we see is that we're too reactionary. We wait until too much has happened before we move in. So we're way too reactionary to these things.
Well, a JDP 0704 GC6 says this could have happened to both of you. And that saying that Edwards and the borough failed is ludicrous. And I think you kind of addressed it, but I'll also say that what we're saying is there's epic failure throughout the whole department at this time for this. Okay, that it's a intel failure, it's for chief of department failure, police commissioner failure, and I'm not just blaming Edwards. All right, but taking the things that are happening around the country and around the world, the level of threat, the level of possibility of violence is increased. So they need to step this up a little bit. Last Thursday, because we were on Thursday, not on Wednesday, we mentioned some of this. We mentioned this. I specifically said, look out for secondary devices, things that turn volatile, things that happen. So yeah, I totally agree that I'm not pushing all the blame on Chief Edwards, okay? But he is the FAA executive, whatever. But all I'm saying is things could have been done when if you're not evaluating the incident as it occurs. So often any issue is adapt, improvise and overcome. And I don't think that was done here. I think there's a lot of complacency because everything, it's just a demonstration, it's just this. And I also think that people are afraid to step it up a little bit, like I explained earlier, to step it up a little bit because of this agreement. And they can, right? You just explained why they can and how they can, but they are hesitant to do it because of the political implications that happen later on, because of the mayor and the police commissioner who's not going to back you. So am I picking on Chief Edwards? No, I'm picking on everybody because I think there was an epic failure all the way up.
And again, we're going to get into it, and we're 52 minutes in. So we're going to get into a lot of video. We're going to break it down as quickly as we can. And we're not just saying these things. We're going to show you why we're saying these things and at what point things could have been articulated to bump things up. And like I said, had they moved SRG in, had they controlled the scene, had they cordoned off the pens and kept the demonstration and counter demonstration separate, does that mean that these two individuals couldn't have driven from New Jersey or from Pennsylvania over to George Washington Bridge, parked their car where they parked it, got out, walked over and got into the counter-protest pen or the protest pen, right? If that was going to be their target, the people that were there for the, against the Islamification of New York City protest with Lang, gotten into their pen, right? Because they're not checking which side of the protest card you're on, right? You go where you're told, where you're asked, where's the pen? This is the pen for this is the pen for that. And still detonated those devices. Again, that's not what we're saying. We're not saying that had SRG moved in, had more police officers been there, had we controlled the scene better, that this still couldn't have happened. It's not what I'm saying. I don't think it's what you're saying either. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, here's the other thing. I'll tell you that there was a bombing, right? Grenades were thrown at the military substation in Times Square. Never solved. An explosion went off inside Central Park. I think one person lost his ankle or hurt his leg or whatever. Never solved. So what I'm saying with this is, if we don't learn from our mistakes, then we're bound to repeat them. And what I feel that this was a repeat of mistakes that have previously happened in the past. Okay, so we need to be back on our game. And like I said last week, and you said too, when we're at war, we need to step it up even more. Right? What the hell is heightened alert? This doesn't seem to me that we were on heightened alert for this goddamn demonstration. So, I mean, this is that's the point. I'm saying is your job as the police commissioner, the chief of department, the chief of the borough is to protect your men and women. And if you don't do that, then you fail. Now, I'm not saying that this couldn't happen. Absolutely, unequivocally. These lone wolves, we saw at the Boston Marathon bombing, people can sneak in. There's ways to do it. Unless you're in Times Square on New Year's Eve and everybody gets vetted going in, do you really know that's secure? And I told you there's flaws there. All right. Vinny Giordano would always flip his lid when we would let the pizza delivery guy come in with about 6 pizzas, delivering pizza to the guy that inside the crowd that just ordered pizza, because those boxes aren't open and vetted. That guy could be carrying a bomb in. So come on, this is time to start thinking. Get your head in the game. I'll go use the old proverbial put a helmet on and get in the game, because now's not the time to walk around and think everything's pretty and clean. Okay, so I'm saying epic failure all along. I don't care what reactionary, absolutely. All right, did an outstanding job, but you know what? Like you said earlier, luck runs out. Okay, they are so damn lucky that those things didn't explode. My God. So
we're gonna get into we're gonna show videos of how lucky I think.
Yeah.
We're gonna show videos that demonstrate when we explain what we believe should have been done. Because again, are we Monday morning quarterbacking? Yes. Were we there? No. Were we in the heat of the moment? No. Were we in the midst of the chaos? No. But again, it's an after action report that we're doing, right? We're talking about looking at things and saying, hey, make it a teachable moment. Okay? Don't hail this as a success by the NYPD, because it was not a success by the NYPD. It was a failure by these 2 miscreants that, thank God, didn't know how to make a proper bomb. Because had they, we would have such mass casualties and so many dead police officers and civilians, or severely maimed, because what was their intention? They wanted to have more carnage than the Boston Marathon. That was their words.
Yeah.
Okay, that's their words. And to Acer KRT, if hate speech and hate crimes are illegal, why is it legal to have hate protests? Why would New York City let a guy who's a known Muslim-hating Nazi plan to show up outside Muslim mayor's house? Hate speech is not illegal. We've talked about this. It's your First Amendment right to say disgusting and vile things. And unfortunately, it is the duty of sworn law enforcement to protect you while you do that. So we'll get into what Mayor Mamdani says about the First Amendment protected speech. But I'll go along with his sentiment, because we're a First Amendment platform. We've talked about in the past how speech could be disgusting and vile, but it's lawful, and we have to support someone's right to be disgusting and vile. Okay, hate crimes are another story, right? Speech is not a crime. So
I think what Samara Cohen's funny. People need their pizza. Absolutely. It just needs to be inspected before they get it. And 92 Charlie, right? Yeah. The U.S. initiated the Iran conflict, and the city seems to be lax right now. It's crazy. It absolutely is. I mean, you and I spoke about it, right? Morgan Wright spoke about it on the 10-4 Tavern, their podcast. What is heightened alert? What is that? If this demonstration didn't need heightened alert, I don't know what did. So where was it? What was the heightened alert? Because the 2-star chief was walking around? I don't know.
All right. Well, 1 hour into it, we're going to start getting into the videos. I think it was important that we gave that background of the protest settlement agreement, and highlight areas of that where I believe articulation plays big, and things could have been escalated while remaining inside the protest settlement agreement. Because there's the argument of public safety has to trump all, which it does. But having the knowledge, right? Knowledge is power. The old adage, knowledge is power, right? Having that knowledge of the ability to articulate your knowledge is so important, and having the balls to make the call and stand by your decision. That's what is missing in a lot of the leadership. And again, I'm not pointing blame at any specific person. We are going to point out where we think things should have pivoted and been escalated where control should have been taken, and could it possibly have avoided the situation? Possibly. We don't know. But you need to take what happened as a learning experience. You need to look at it, and again, I say it, I said it, you said it. We can't wave the flag of success, plant that flag of success, that this was such a success and that people were so heroic. There were heroic actions. There's heroic actions every day. Somebody walks out the door. Every day, NYPD officers walk out the door. They are being heroic in their actions. But a lot of things were done that put people into harm's way, and people put themselves in harm's way due to lack of training, lack of intelligence sharing and communication, and to be perfectly honest, just the cops do not have the foresight and aren't out there with that heightened awareness, and just think it's not going to happen. It'll never happen. It won't happen to them. It's not going to happen. And it's just, that's not a way that things, we got so lucky here, and we need to take this as a learning experience, and we need to make changes. And the police commissioner says that she's not. We're going to get to that a little later too. So we're an hour into it already. Like Terry Marine always says, thank you, Terry, for always being here. Hit the like, share, and subscribe button. Get that algorithm going. All right.
See, you know what? The most successful stories are the ones that you don't hear. Okay.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. This should not be touted as a success story. I can tell you a success story in the Bronx. I think I was a captain at the time. We partnered up with the bomb squad and did a tactical entry into a house. And inside that house was TATP. And they were building bombs to do a terrorist attack. They also had grenades and weapons. So when we made the tactical entry, of which we had the bomb squad in the stack, right? So when I mean in the stack, so you had all ESU guys, and then you had bomb squad embedded in the team going in. Now that's not usually the way it is, but the good thing is about it is a lot of people from the bomb squad were prior emergency service members, so they know the tactics and they know that. But anyway, they went in, and we found a lot of TAPT that was stored in refrigerators and freezers, you know, and they were brought in. The bomb squad was brought in so that they could make sure there wasn't anything volatile, or, you know, if there was something, you know, booby trapped or anything else. So they were brought in, but that was never put in the newspapers. That was never put anywhere, but that was a successful, deployment. Here, to me, was luck. And this is the point where we have to say, let's reevaluate what we do. Don't say that we're going to continue with what we do. We need to reevaluate what we're going to do and then adjust. All right. Like I said earlier, right? It's adapt, improvise, and overcome. You have to do that. Otherwise, we're a stagnant police department. And you're gonna and guys and girls are gonna get hurt, right? So I'll give you a quick another example, right? You do a car stop, right? The first time you do a car stop, you might walk up to the driver's side door, and maybe you walk a little too far, right? You pass the second window, the passenger window, and you go up and you say, "Oh shoot, there was somebody in the passenger side. I didn't even see, right? I didn't see." So the next time you start looking and you make your visuals, so you adapt. Here, we're not adapting. We're just saying, oh, yeah, everything's good because there was a good outcome, a lucky outcome. But that's not good. You need to take this, look at it, and learn from it and move forward. Like, don't like
Nolan 63,
yeah.
Another supporter of the network. Thanks for being with us. Rewarding luck will lead to more casualties. That's 100%. Yeah. So let's take a look at the first video. Actually, I was gonna do the Tish briefing, which gives an overview of everything that happened. So let's do that, and then we'll kind of work backwards and we'll show what happened at the detail that day. So this is yesterday, right? When they announced the charges, she's standing at the podium with the AUSA and the special agent in charge of New York, with Chief LaPetri and with Rebecca Weiner, who's the
Oh my God. I forgot about her. Jesus.
Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism.
Is it Deputy Commissioner of Intel? That's an oxymoron right there. Oh my God. What when you listen to her, I don't know if you have her when she's speaking, but she does not know any intel. She does not know what she's doing. I looked at her background. I think she was a teacher for Columbia University or whatever. This person, a Harvard graduate, hey, all well and good, but should not at all be part of counterterrorism within the NYPD. Absolutely no knowledge. And I don't know. Just if you just listen to her, my God, it was terrible. But
I don't know her. I don't know her background to comment. But let's take a look.
I looked it up, so she's a retard.
Earlier today, I provided an update on the investigation into explosive devices that were ignited and deployed on Saturday during protests outside of Gracie Mansion. We can now share that federal charges have been filed in the Southern District of New York against two individuals, Amir Balat and Ibrahim Kayumi, in connection with that attack. The defendants are charged with attempting to provide material support to ISIS, using a weapon of mass destruction, transporting explosive materials, interstate transportation and receipt of explosive materials, and unlawful possession of destructive devices. The complaint sets forth the factual allegations supporting those charges. As alleged in the complaint, the defendants were inspired by ISIS to carry out their attack. There should be no confusion about what ISIS constitutes. It is a designated foreign terrorist organization responsible for deadly terrorist attacks across the globe and has taken credit for mass casualty attacks in Europe, the Middle East, and right here in the United States. And as alleged, both defendants have admitted that they acted on Saturday because of ISIS. As Kayumi was being placed into an NYPD vehicle following his arrest, a person in the crowd asked why he had done this. As shown on NYPD body-worn camera footage referenced in the complaint, Kayumi responded with ISIS. And at the precinct, after being advised of his Miranda rights and waiving those rights, Kayumi said in recorded post-arrest statements that he had watched ISIS propaganda on his phone and that his actions that day were partly inspired by ISIS. The complaint also details statements made by Amir Balat after his arrest. En route to the NYPD precinct, Balat made spontaneous statements without being questioned by NYPD officers that were captured on body-worn camera footage. He said, "This isn't a religion that just stands when people talk about the blessed name of the prophet. We take action, as well as, if I didn't do it, someone else will come and do it." And later, after waiving his rights, he requested paper and wrote a message declaring in part, "I pledge my allegiance to the Islamic State. Die in your rage, you kuffar." Now, die in your rage is a commonly known ISIS slogan, and kuffar is an Arabic term that refers to non-believers. He also told investigators that he had hoped to carry out an attack even bigger than the Boston Marathon bombing, which he noted resulted in only 3 deaths. These statements, as set forth in the complaint, make clear that this was not random violence. This was a planned attack motivated by extremist ideology and inspired by a violent foreign terrorist organization. The complaint alleges not only why the defendants acted, but how. Preliminary testing has determined that one of the devices contained triacetone triperoxide, or TATP, also commonly referred to as Mother of Satan, a highly volatile explosive that has been used in multiple terrorist attacks over the last decade. As we have previously discussed, the NYPD identified a vehicle yesterday on East End Avenue that was linked to the defendants. Inside that vehicle, investigators recovered handwritten notes referencing TATP explosive and listing chemical ingredients for the type of explosive device used by the defendants on Saturday. Make no mistake, what happened this weekend was incredibly dangerous, and the ongoing investigation will be exhaustive. From the first moments of that investigation, the NYPD has been working seamlessly with our federal partners, many of whom have joined us here. In particular, the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, which includes NYPD detectives, working alongside federal agents. They have been at the center of this investigation. Members of the FBI and the Joint Terrorism Task Force, including NYPD task force officers, have executed search warrants at Kayumi and Balat's residences in Pennsylvania. Another important note, the two defendants arrived in New York City roughly 1 hour before they were arrested. According to our investigation, they crossed the George Washington Bridge with a license plate reader ping at 11:36 a.m. on Saturday, parked in front of 48 East End Avenue between 81st and 82nd Streets at 12:05 p.m., and walked to the protest. They ignited and threw the devices at approximately 12:15 p.m. and were immediately arrested thereafter. I want to thank our great United States Attorney Jay Clayton for his extraordinary partnership, as well as the prosecutors from SDNY for everything that they do, especially.
And she goes on and just, thanks everybody. So, I mean, listen, I think it's a good rundown of what's going on and what happened. So you get an idea of exactly, what happened there and what's involved. But we're going to get into it after we discussed the attack and the response. But
Earlier today, I stayed on the.
What's missing from this picture? The leader of New York City, the mayor of New York City, is not at this press conference. And we're going to get into a little bit of a timeline of his comments and show his press conference a little bit later. But it's just, there's no leadership, there's no support of the NYPD. There's no him standing there and denouncing these terrorists and proclaiming that they are, ISIS-inspired Islamic jihadists. It's just not going to come out of his mouth. And we're going to see that very consistently, very consistently.
I think also missing is most of that information would normally have come from somebody like John Miller, right? From counter-terrorism. And Rebecca Weiner there absolutely looks like she's a deer in the headlights, has no idea what's going on and just looking straight ahead. She is responsible for the JTTF. They fall under the counter-terrorism. So again, she doesn't say anything. She's just standing there. So I just think that I don't know whether it's Jessica Tisch that feels that she has to give all this information, but any other police commissioner would have brought up their deputy commissioner from counterterrorism or intel or whatever and said, "Hey, give us the information that you got." But that was totally blatant. But yeah, I mean, it's just a terrible thing. I think that I don't know, Tisch took over it, whatever, but I don't even know why Mike LaPetrie's standing there. It's just ridiculous. I mean, in that interview, does it go on further? Because I mean, I only watched it when she spoke, but
it goes into.
Does anybody else speak besides her?
Yeah, they come up, but they basically just repeat what happened. They don't give you any further information. They basically like all these other, press conferences for all these other high-profile incidents all throughout the country where the mayor usually gets up there and says something, right? The leader right? Either the governor or the mayor. Haven't heard from the governor. I'll put up her 3 little tweets that she put out a little bit later. But usually in an incident this prolific, you'll see the governor or the mayor of the town or the city or the state up being the main spokesperson, giving these details, hand it off to the lead law enforcement agency, which would be here the NYPD, and then they let their partners come up. And what do? They come up and they repeat the same thing the last person just says, and thanks for the partnership. Then the next ATF comes up and repeats the same thing, and thanks for the partnership. And the FBI comes up and says the same thing, and thanks for partnership. And that's what they did. That's what they did. The U.S. attorney, we're going to prosecute, thank God for the NYPD and everything that they've done. And then there's a little bit of a Q&A that I'm going to bring up a little later, because that's when she discusses the SRG deployment and answers the question about does she think in light of this, should there be any changes in the way we police First Amendment activities? And we know what her answer to that is already. And just a quick note, Benito, calm down. Don't spam the chat. I don't have time for it today.
So I just with Rebecca Weiner again. She's the deputy commissioner of Intel. So obviously there was no intel, right? There was no information that was passed down relative to this demonstration, relative to the possibility of anything that could have happened, the violence. So absolutely nothing. Who's in charge of counterterrorism? Isn't that Matarazzo? Is that Matarazzo who's in charge of counterterrorism?
She's the uniform chief.
Yeah, she's a 3-star chief.
She's a 3-star chief, but Weiner is above her.
Yeah, well, Weiner's not saying anything. I mean, this was a terrorism act of terrorism.
But then again, Tish wants control. You see that in a lot of the press conferences where Tish will answer questions that really somebody else should be answering because it's under their forte, but she's the boss, and if she has the briefing, she wants to answer the questions.
I think it was more so that she didn't have the answers, and that was an embarrassment because in the other press conference I saw her saying stuff and Tish looking at her like Tish had to reiterate and really answer the question after Weiner had came up to answer it. So I think that, and I think Matarazzo is in the training bureau now. I think is that where she is now. I'm not sure if she's training bureau or she went to housing. I forget where she went now.
No, she was housing.
And she went to the training bureau, right?
Maybe she's in training bureau. To be honest, I'm not sure. Somebody maybe can throw it up there. All right, so let's take a look at the first thing, and this is where Chief Edwards is, out and about within the demonstration.
Guys, get off the barriers. Community affairs, wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Hold this pen down here. Hey, hold on. I mean, all. But if I was with you. Legal! About the black man. Legal!
So he's out there, and our first line of defense at a First Amendment activity is community affairs, and they don't have the barriers lined up in order to prevent people from taking over the streets and people just being guided to where they're supposed to be, right? Because that's supposed to be right there, a chute into the pen where the protesters are being placed in order to have their First Amendment activity, right? You give them a location, sight and sound. I want to protest Gracie Mansion. So you're going to be on this corner, and this is where your pen is going to be, so that anybody in Gracie Mansion can hear you and you can see what you're doing, right? Sight and sound, right? And what are they doing? They're just hanging out on the barriers. And so Edwards put them in their place. Said, oh, Community affairs, wake up. Let's go. Get off the barriers. Do your thing. But my point there is that he's out. He's about. I give him credit for that. He's not up at the borough waiting for a phone call to see if the shit hits the fan, right? He's out there, right? Leading from the front. I'll give him that, right? And he's putting these cops in their place because they're being complacent. They're being complacent. He's actually walking with the crowd with this Jake Lang guy, which we're going to see next, where it gets silly, which is where I think is at the point where collars should have been made and SRG should have been brought in. But here is the example where community affairs, it's not their place. Their place is to get you information and to coordinate and liaise with the participants and the leadership of the demonstrations, which nowadays, like I said, time and time again, you hardly ever know who they are.
Yeah, I think Marlon's came up with it. John Hart is the chief of Intel, but Rebecca is in charge of both. I think she's the deputy commissioner of counter-terrorism and Intel. I think they had combined that. So, but to your point, having done the borough and done details, most of the time, those barriers should have been set up already, knowing the route, knowing where people were going, and definitely is not the responsibility of the community affairs offices to make sure where the barriers are. That's what, usually you have a spare barrier truck, you have guys setting up barriers, and then when guys take their post, they usually if the barriers aren't already put together, you put them together, right? And I mean, remember how many times you're on a detail, and at the end of the detail, when they finally say break down the barriers. I remember on the West Indian Day Parade, when you heard break down the barriers, you were like, oh, thank God, we're close to going home now.
When you saw sanitation coming down the block, when sanitation trucks started coming,
all of them driving together like this. Yeah.
But
it's like the part in the Red Sea.
This is where which I disagree with. You got a 2-star chief is basically escorting this guy Lang in, but he's putting himself front and center where he knows the antagonist is going to be, where the problems are going to be. But now, putting yourself in that position, do you take the appropriate action? And let's take a look at them walking after they leave community affairs, and it looks like he ripped them a little bit of an asshole, which they deserve. That's fine. Take your head out of your ass, do your job. Let's pay attention to what's going on. And
so hold on, time out. I gotta call a timeout, because if a 2-star chief is yelling at cops, in my opinion, where is the tier? I mean, first of all, if I was there and I came up and I saw the barriers on awry, I'm not yelling at cops.
I'm looking for the boss.
I'm finding out. I'm going down the ranks. All right, who's in charge of this area? Who's the zone commander? Who's this?
Did you see any?
Who's the detail? Yeah, that's it.
I didn't see any.
I'm not yelling.
The only bosses I saw were with him.
Yeah, well, then that's a problem then. Right?
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Where's the captain? Yeah, all right. I don't know if there has to be a captain on that corner. I don't know how big that corner is, but there's got to be a sergeant on that corner. Like you said, there's going to be 1 and 8 assigned to that intersection, right? Where's the sergeant? Where's the community affairs supervisor? And you know what? Maybe one of those guys was a community affairs supervisor, and we just didn't see the lieutenant bars or whatever because their uniforms kind of blend. But yeah, 100%. You got to grab the boss, and like making that statement, just, hey, community affairs, wake up. If I was, the pucker factor should have went up for the boss. Whatever boss was in that range of Chief Edwards' voice right there, the pucker factor should have raised quite high. But let's look as they walk further down the street before anything really happens, because we're an hour and 25 in, and we got so much to get to. we're going to lose certain viewers at 8 o'clock.
Fuck that shit!
So now here, you just have, I see a lieutenant. I see cops pulling community affairs cop back because he pushed somebody. I see a sergeant facing the cops, another sergeant facing the crowd, a lieutenant kind of looking over like, what's going on over there? And it's just, it's out of control. So we don't have, right now, we don't have control. And again, I pulled this off of X from freedomnews.tv. So a lot of this stuff was pulled off. I don't know if we're going to get put down today from other videos that we're going to show. If we do, go over to X because, you know, John and Eric and Marlon got pulled down last week when they were talking about the incident in Times Square.
I see. Well, I think 92 Charlie saying I see a 5-hour show here. Chief, no cash, no overtime there, no overtime. We got to do.
We're gonna try and get through it. We're gonna try and get through it.
What cracks me up about that photo right there, that it makes me. I was laughing when you were talking because of that photo. Look where we're at now, where we have to hold the community affairs officer back. Hey, that's not the I'm sorry police anymore.
So let's keep going with this.
Let's go. Protect the fucking Nazis yet again. Let's go, Crusaders!
Now, let's look at this picture. And when you want to show command presence, do you do it by some cops wearing helmets, some cops wearing knit hats, some guys wearing baseball caps, some guys wearing 8-point hats, and you're intermingled with everybody. There's no zone of safety, span of safety. There's nothing. And what they're doing is they're escorting this knucklehead in. And you know, like, you know, Marlon says, it's a shit show. It's a shit show at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, you know, just tactically, when that should have been a stop, reset, and reevaluate right there, because you literally have to push people out of the way to get down this block. Something's going on, all right, and it's very dangerous. And you're lucky that those bombers didn't do something right there, right? Because had those things detonated, none of those people would have a way of egress or anywhere else. It would have been more people probably would have been trampled on top of each other than the destruction of what the bomb did. So terrible.
All right, I'm gonna take this down for 1 second. Just you know, 2 more years. Monday morning quarterbackers. That's right. That's exactly what we're doing. And if you've watched any of our shows, we explained it, and I said it earlier in the show. So go back and rewind exactly what Monday morning quarterbacking is and what the benefit of it is. We're not trashing Edwards. We haven't mentioned anything about collars. So bye-bye. You're not going to acknowledge the rest of the night. Nonsense comments just to make your comments. All right. So let's get back to it.
Go to the protest pen. Go to the protest pen. No, we're not. It's on the corner. Go to the protest pen. Let's go. Clear the way.
This is all our land.
Back up. Always look out. I can only do Hold the line!
Okay. So I want to get to this right here. There's Chief Edwards in the midst of it, right? There's the big mouth that's with Jake Lang with the red hair. And we'll see Jake Lang running his mouth too. But you'll hear, at first, you'll hear something about holding a line. That comes from the uniformed lieutenant. Take a look. See, right there, he's saying hold the line. Now, this provocateur and this other guy are going to start screaming, hold the line, patriots, hold the line. This is our exact point. This is happening in front of, right here, front and center, Chief Edwards. They do not have control. The officers, whether it's a lack of training, whether it's a lack of ability, are not maintaining a formation that's necessary to safely maneuver down this street and keep the participants of the First Amendment activity safe, as well as the members of the service. Listen, QC Beast, I understand he's busy. He's right there. The guy's screaming in his ear. Let's watch.
Hold the fucking line, Patriots! Hold the fucking line! They're swinging! The guy in the mask!
They're swinging, guy in the mask. Violence, assaults, right? What do we need here? We don't need SRG 2 blocks away. Right here, right now, is Monday morning quarterbacking, where I'm saying that the chief, who is the FAA executive, First Amendment activity executive, has the authority to upgrade this and bring in the strategic response group who do it better than anybody else. Like I think John said it, right? Which SRG does better than anyone. That's what we need here. We don't need these mishmash of cops that are on patrol. Some of them have helmets. Some of them are community affairs. Some of them are the chief staff. Okay? Right here, right now, is what we're saying. At this particular juncture, you, under this protest settlement agreement, have the authorization, if you articulate it properly, and it's not a stretch, we're watching it. It's not a stretch. This is chaos. You are aware of intelligence of potential violence. You now have a uniformed lieutenant telling officers to hold a line, which they don't even have and they're not formulating. Right in the center there in the green shirt is Jake Lang. The big mouth redhead talking about patriots doing this and that is pointing out that somebody is swinging. Marlon says something flew over their head on camera. I didn't catch that, okay? But I'm sure it happened. You have all of these things, and the chief isn't waiting. You don't need the incident commander to notify you that, hey, I got a problem over here on 82nd Street. He's present. He's front and center. The call could have been made immediately at that point to bring in SRG and clear this street and lock it down. You don't have to stop the protest and disperse it completely, but you need to maintain order. You need to get order, not maintain. There is no order. You need to get order. You need to get control of this scene, control of the situation, and that's where I say the chief fell short.
Yeah, so I would have brought in SRG, and definitely at that point, they have the poly shields. They also, I don't know if you ever seen them, they definitely know how to do a great line. And if you ever hear them, they'll say, move back, move back, move back, and they'll keep pushing. And that's what should have been done.
And they're also equipped properly. These guys don't,
Right.
I haven't seen one stick. One
No.
PR-24, one nightstick, one ASP in order to use those to push people back. Why?
Yeah,
Why? Because of optics over everything. The optics wouldn't have looked good if they had something in their hands, right? They're not even allowed to have flex cuffs if they have to start having mass arrests because of the protest agreement. Horseshit. Let's keep going.
Guy in the fucking mask! Calm down! Per usual! Calm down! The ones in the mask! The violent left! Tell them to respect freedom of speech! What do we have? Go! Move to the side! Don't be violent! We're gonna eat you for fucking breakfast!
Now, this short little female, I want you to watch this because, again, this goes from OGA, nonviolent, non-resistant OGA, to harassment of a police officer and borderline assault. So let's watch. And the officers of today are just so hesitant to take action. And again, there are supervisors there. There are executives on the scene. SRG is not there. You still have, you have cops pushing. You have what looks like this guy Lang's security pushing people away. We do not have control. We do not have control. And these protesters, these are actually counter protesters because the actual technical protest is Lang's anti-Islamification of New York City protest. So these are counter protests to Lang that somehow got down and are now blocking the street and blocking the sidewalk and blocking the passage of the police and the actual protest. So you need to bring in special formations as quoted from the protest settlement agreement and push these counter protesters out of the way. Well, let's watch what she does. It infuriates me.
Keep pushing! Keep pushing, you coward! Keep pushing, you coward! Keep pushing, you coward!
Guys, it's that simple. Walk. Back up, guys.
Yeah, do it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it, big guy. Keep doing it, big guy.
I mean,
Move that way.
again, she's up against him. She's pushing up against him. She's pushing up against, she's not in his face. She's pushing him. She's physically leaning against him and pushing him. And no cop can allow that to happen at any point. That is beyond a red light offense. What do you think?
I mean, I agree with what the chat's saying. Some of it too said that, you know, I think Hans is saying it on X. He says he has his hands behind his back, you know, WTF. I agree. You know, I think your hands should be out in front of yourselves. I think that person should be in handcuffs right now. So it would have been with me. There's no way. And I understand that the job's changed. And I understand that, you know, all the bullshit with the business cards and CCRB and all of that stuff. But I'm sorry, that's a collar right there. I don't give a shit. Red light, green light, 1, 2, 3. That's
Right.
a collar, man.
But
I don't give a shit.
JDP 0704, these cops look pathetic. And they do. But why? Where is the leadership? Where is the direction from their supervisor? Where is that lieutenant's direction? Where is the sergeant's lieutenant? Where is Chief Edwards' leadership and direction to these officers? They don't feel like they have the support. They don't feel like they're allowed to do anything. They feel like they have to stand there and be a punching bag. The bosses have to have the balls to stand up and say, no, This is a violation that's gone too far. Can't do it. And the chief should have called in SRG. That was the point of those 2 videos right there, to prove everything that we've built up. We're an hour and 40 minutes in. We're going to go long tonight, unfortunately, but we're an hour and 40 minutes in, and we didn't even get to the attack yet. We're just showing the protest settlement agreement, how flawed it is, but how you do have the ability as an executive to step it up. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. We'll read the super chats out later tonight at the end. We appreciate your support. All right. Yes, I will see you tomorrow. I'll mention that at the end of the show as well. All right. Now, let's get into the scariest of everything. The actual throwing of the IEDs. And this is not the one that everybody's really honing in on social media and the mainstream media. You'll see some pictures, because this is the one where he throws over the head of the guy with the bullhorn and throws the first IED. So this is the first IED. So let's take a look at this and then try to briefly, see if there's anything we want to point out on it.
Yo, this nigga threw a bomb, bro. Yo, he threw a bomb. Yo, did he throw a bomb, bro?
Nice.
That shit stinks. That shit stinks.
Yeah,
Yo, did he just throw a Allah Akbar bomb, bro? Yo, that shit stinks. You know damn well that wasn't me, though. That was crazy. He threw an Allah Akbar cocktail at y'all. That was some wild shit, bro. And y'all saying them niggas is good?
So that's, I gotta see, that's from Guardians of Divinity, posted that online. But my thing that blows my mind here is he's saying he threw an Allah Akbar bomb and nobody's really reacting. So an IED is thrown over his head. They see it. This guy's calling it out, going, was that an Allah Akbar? And the cops aren't really responding. They're not pushing the crowd back. And we'll see a little bit later more of when we talk about the actual the response, that how the cops were very complacent, and I don't think that they really understood the gravity and the dangerousness of this incident. Anything on this?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what John, Eric, Marlon, you and I, Tom and Pete have all been talking about. There's a gap in training and experience within the police department, and nobody's filling that gap. Nobody's telling them or training them on what could be and what can happen. So when somebody says something like that, their perception is, oh, okay, like what? No. Somebody just threw an IED, man. So as soon as you hear those words, then something's going on. There's some sort of terroristic attack, or if not, there's a possibility of it. So I mean, they need to step up the game. I mean, where is the training? Where get people with experience and have them talk to these guys that are on the street and let them know, because I can clearly see that just to stand there and arbitrarily think that, oh, everything's cool, and not even, to me, didn't even look like they understood the magnitude of what just had happened is ridiculous. They need to go and be trained better and understand. And like we said, I keep reiterating the same point, and I'm sorry, but like we said last week, they're not ready. Okay. This is what high alert means, for Christ's sake. This is high alert, right, bro? This is it, man. That somebody's yelling Ali Akbar, and they're throwing something, I don't give a shit what they're throwing. If they're throwing something, they're saying that. First of all, in my opinion, guns drawn, man, and I'm surprised there were no guns drawn at all. But you start throwing IEDs, you start saying that thing. This is game on now. You know, I mean, come on.
Like how
Scary.
like cops going, was that a shot? Did you hear a shot? And just like no situational awareness. Situational awareness is just not there. All right. So let's look at the second one. This one's got a lot more traction because the chief's involved and there's more footage of it. And we're going to look at this from a couple of different angles, I think, and then we'll start getting into the response and how we think that people should have responded differently. I mean, we've mentioned a lot of it already, but let's take a look. This is so after he throws that first device, and this is why, some people have said, after he throws the first device, he never should have got to throw the second device. Well, he threw it from behind the crowd. So I don't know that the cops on that other side of that crowd where that knucklehead was with the megaphone saw who threw it. I don't know. And he turns around and immediately runs back down the block. And that's when he meets up with the second perp who hands him the second bomb that he ignites. And that's when you see Chief Edwards and the sergeant, I think his name is is it Benitez? Or is that sticking in my head from something else? But the sergeant, male Hispanic sergeant, start approaching him because the chief says in a later interview that the sergeant said, hey, look at these guys. They got something in their hands. What are they doing? Sergeant Navarro. Thank you, Marlon. So he throws it, turns, and runs immediately down the block and grabs the second device. And this is what we see. So now he turns and runs. And we have no cops in between. On each end of the block, there's cops. On the one end of the block is where he threw the first. Now he's running down the street. And the next set of cops is all the way down the block where it's Chief Edwards, Sergeant Navarro, some other members of the service that are standing there with their hands in their pocket, not paying attention. And you can watch them stand there with their hands in their pockets as the chief and the sergeant take police action. And they remain standing there with their hands in their pocket because they're complacent and they don't have situational awareness, even though they're looking right at the damn thing. But again, had there been more police, had it been more controlled, and John says it here, if it was staffed properly, he would have been identified and arrested after the first throw. That's possible. Had they brought in SRG, had they penned them off better, there would have been a clearer zone of safety and an open area where officers could have observed more. So I'll agree with you that if it was staffed properly and if SRG had moved in, because this was after the incidents that we showed you before, where it was completely out of control and they were escorting Lang in. So if now you brought in SRG and now you have kind of control instead of just chaos, there was other cops. And after the first one gets thrown and you see this guy running down the street screaming, Allah, Allah Akbar again, and he stops and he runs past his buddy. Then he goes back. He hands it to him. Now he's fumbling. And again, this is second. So as he's doing this is when Navarro notifies the chief, hey, those two guys got something in their hand. Now, Navarro and the chief don't know that the first device was thrown. They also, I don't believe, know that he's lighting an IED. They just know something's just not right. The spidey senses are tingling that something's going wrong over there. Let's go check it out. But there's time. But now you're screaming Allah Akbar. you're running, and now you're lighting a device. Even though that first device didn't explode, thank God, because it hit a barrier and it extinguished itself, is what Tish explained, that the fuse extinguished itself. So we don't know if that was another dud like this one that actually burned out and didn't explode. We don't know if that other one had the good fortune of it hitting a barrier and extinguishing, if the fuse would have hit the explosive portion, if that would have exploded, and we could have had a tragedy. So there's luck number one, right? Now you have him here. Now, I'm sorry, again, situational awareness and what's going on. And this is a terrorist attack, and not at one point has anyone taken a firearm out. And I'm sorry, I understand there's a crowd behind them. I understand that under heightened awareness, under him running down the streets, screaming Allah Akbar, now he's lighting some type of device. The cops from the other corner start coming down the street towards him, right? All of these things, you got to step it up. You got to step it up. And now if you see him coming at you like we're going to see, you are completely justified in the use of deadly physical force there. And you know what? If you miss, and God forbid, an innocent bystander gets hit, of course, that'll be all over the news. But I'm sorry, the rules of engagement, you have to stop this threat from mass casualties.
Right here. Right here. It's 2 in the chest, 1 in the head. That's
So
what should have been done.
Let's watch as he ignites this, and then encounters the chief and the sergeant.
Stay back. Stay back.
So now, my take on this is that these cops don't know what's really going on. They just know that the chief's running down saying, get that guy. And they're collaring him and trying to keep whatever crowd that's coming down the street trying to film and other protesters back. I don't know that they are aware that he threw an IED yet, but the chief is. And I'll show that after. But let's watch with this arrest situation and apprehension. So now somebody brought to my attention, because I didn't pick up on it right away. This guy is on the ground. He's still saying Allah Akbar right now. And he threw an IED, and his hoodie is still closed. So what type of proper toss was this guy given, if any?
Get somebody on the other side.
Hey, street! Get out of the street! Somebody left their skateboard. Out of the street, out of the street, out of the street. Come on, guys, get up. Back it up, back it up. Back up, guys. Guys, get off the street.
So now they have him in custody, and they're going to get him out of there. Right? But now, what you see and what has been, circulating around are, I gotta remove that, sorry. Sorry, Rob. I gotta take the video down. Where's the video? Sorry. All right, there we go. So what we see is him run down the street, and as the chief and the sergeant are approaching, the IED is bouncing down towards them. And the sergeant's looking down at the device. I think the chief has his eyes directly on the perp. And then, to me, it looks like the sergeant is like trying to avoid, and dancing over. And I watched videos from different angles, trying to avoid this IED. I don't know if he knows that it's an IED. I don't know what he thinks it is, but he knows it's something and it ain't good. And to me, it looks like he's trying to avoid it. And then you see the chief, again, is turning towards the barrier that's down in the street, and he's up on the sidewalk, and he's going to now, the infamous picture of him leaping over the barrier, which, good for him. He's remained in good shape, and he had the ability and the agility to go over that barrier a couple of feet in the air to go after this perp. So what are your thoughts on the apprehension and, the sergeant and the chief's actions at this point?
Well, you see these demonstrations with ICE, right? And you see ICE throw smoke grenades, tear gas, and you see a lot of times the demonstrators throw it back. And you see the ICE guys either kick it to the side or push it to the side. Listen, I learned years ago, you don't kick anything while you're in uniform. I don't know if he kicked it or not. Whatever. It's hard to judge. But I learned.
Right. So,
let me finish. Hold on. So I learned. It was a motor vehicle accident. I set up flares, right? So the first flare, anybody studying for sergeant exam, is supposed to be 200 feet from the accident, right? So I set the flares up, and the accident was cleared. So what do? I go and kick the flares. What happens when you kick a flare? All that stuff that's in the flare, and that's when we wore those polyester pants.
I've melted a pair of pants myself. Yes,
yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So that was my first learning experience. That I'm not going to kick anything on this job. So I don't know whether he kicked it or not, but yeah. So that thing's rolling towards them. If you see a 2-star chief, if I saw a 2-star chief and a sergeant running after somebody, I'm stopping the guy too, no matter what, right? You got to figure something. So shit's hitting the fan right now. I'm stopping the person. Is it hard to stop somebody that could have a suicide bomb vest on them or be armed? Absolutely. We're taught, and I think God is one. Mentioned it earlier that Commissioner Kelly was sending cops to New Mexico Tech to combat this very thing. It was incident response to terrorist bombing, which I was actually fortunate enough to go, as well as a lot of the emergency service officers were too, where they actually detonate things, and you seriously see how much energy and damage that these small type of devices can cause. But what they teach you is, extremities, right? Because what you don't want, you don't want somebody to, tap their arms together with the detonate or whatever, bring the detonator together. So it's, one on each arm, one on each leg. I don't know if these officers that apprehended this individual knew that. But to your point, to John McCarty's point earlier, had there been officers along that barrier, that guy wouldn't have leaped over. All right, he would have been grabbed right there. So that to me was a failure. I truthfully think, and I know that Robert Murphy mentioned it earlier in the chat, another good friend mentioned it, that that the cop that apprehended him, right? The male white cop who apprehended him is no hero. Nobody's saying anything about this guy. This guy took, in my opinion, if not the same, more risk to try to stop this guy, because I would have thought that guy throws an IED, does something running, and maybe that cop saw the thing burning, right? Saw the IED burning or whatever, because at that point that thing was still burning. A chief jumping over the fence, the sergeant. I give that guy a lot of credit for making that apprehension, because he's the real hero. He stopped that guy. That guy could have had a suicide vest on. He could have detonated himself, and what would have happened? That poor officer that stopped him, he would have been definitely killed. So I mean, let's give credit to. I think you want to give credit to somebody that saw the incident and then jumped over the fence and started making the apprehension. Okay, that's fine. Like I don't think anybody on our network is arguing that what they did afterwards was not in compliance with what they should have been doing. But that guy that made the apprehension, those guys that are actually on top of that guy, those they're individuals that they put themselves in harm's way too. So I mean, let's 100%. Give them a little credit.
This is right here, and you can't see. This is a bad angle. I know Marlon had a better video. I didn't get a chance to chop it. An open field tackle. This guy got an open field tackle on this guy, took him down, and then then the dog pile. So he's right there. That's one officer that did an open field tackle, and then this, I think it's a female officer, was right there to get in the mix, and then everybody else came over, and then they were given direction to make a circle to keep all these other people back, right? So, and yeah, to your point about whether he kicked it or not, it's up to debate. The video I looked at, it looks like he's like trying to hop over to avoid it. Whatever the case may be, the main point, the main takeaway from this is, again, I don't think that they knew it was an IED right away, obviously, because you don't run towards an IED, right? You would have tried to stop the threat from approaching you instead of approaching it. And then once it's rolling towards you, I think it was more of a what the fuck. And I think he's hopping over it. Whether he hops over it, he hits it with his foot, whatever the case, 100%, you never do that. Just your example of the flare is one thing. We could talk about, what's said to have happened in 1982 at the FALN bombing at One Police Plaza with Officer Rocco Pasquarella, where he lost the bottom of his leg. People say he kicked the Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket. I did some research on it. There's all the court testimony, his testimony, everything else says that it blew as he was approaching it. But what we've all heard throughout our entire careers is that you don't kick a bomb because Rocco Pasquarella lost his leg for kicking the Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket. So whether he kicked it or not, whether this sergeant kicked it or not, you never kick a suspected device or an unknown device, right? And like you said, you went for that training. You saw the detonations. I've never been involved in that. I don't have the knowledge. I've read up on some of it since this incident. But this TATP is supposedly very volatile, right? So kicking it alone could have detonated it without the fuse, if it was properly there and there was a proper amount of it. Am I correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, even a temperature difference, anything, it's extremely volatile. So yeah, that absolutely, definitely could have triggered it. So yeah, it's I don't know. You got to be careful. There's a reason why when you get a suspicious package, right, you call the emergency service unit. Emergency service unit comes up. They don't open it. They don't do anything. They look at it and say, okay,
look at it from afar.
From afar. And is it suspicious? Yes. Why is the backpack sitting there? Oh, that's not good. It's not supposed to be there. Guess what? Let's call in a bomb squad. And then the emergency service unit assists the bomb squad with getting into their bomb gear, and God bless everyone in the bomb squad, because I've been there. That suit is extremely heavy, hot, and here's the caveat to the whole thing. Those poor guys cannot put gloves on. There's no bomb gloves, right? They need to manipulate and look at the device. So even if there's a detonation, God forbid, they're still gonna lose their fingers. So I mean, God bless them all for them. And a lot of them are from, like I said prior, from emergency service. So here's one other theory I had with the sergeant kicking the thrown device. And I heard the sergeant, he was put in for SA. Chief Edwards said no. So as that IED was rolling towards him, the sergeant kicked it in the direction of the chief, and that's what caused the chief to jump over the fence. I'm just saying,
right.
It's speculation.
Well, he's definitely going to get SA, and
Now he is, yeah.
And we're definitely going to see them on the podium at Medal Day. It's just
come on.
It's morphed way beyond that at this point, because of the way that the department is portraying this as a success and the heroism. And again, I'm not saying there wasn't heroism. I'm not saying that every one of those officers weren't in harm's way. They were in more harm's way than any of them perceived. And that's what scares the shit out of me. And listen, that's what scares me. And so you say, who knew? Did they know it was a device, right? Did they know that it was an improvised explosive device? And then if so, what's the protocol? What do you do? Right? You clear the area. Minimum 1,000 feet, right? Clear the area, minimum 1,000 feet. Technically stay off the radio. I don't know if that's still true to this day with the frequencies and whatnot. I think it's still in the patrol guide, but you have to, as executives, right? It's always been our job. Listen, I'll get into his interview with the New York Post a little bit, but one of his statements is, listen, no matter what rank you are, you're always a cop. And I agree with that. Just like there are cops on the scene here that we saw that were standing there with their hands in their pockets that weren't taking action when they watched a chief and a sergeant run, and they weren't in normal uniform, so they were from some kind of detail, a TARU or legal or whatever. I do see the one officer, I don't know what rank he is, with the beard that was seen with the chief earlier. He's on the other side of the barrier during the apprehension, and on the back of his windbreaker, it says legal. So he didn't forget that he was a cop first, and not just there to say, all right, you're allowed to make the arrest. He was part of the apprehension. He made it over that barrier to the other side of the street, from the sidewalk to the street, and was part of that apprehension. So he didn't forget, because first things first, you have to be a cop. So I agree with the chief on that. That listen, just because you're a chief, if there's police action to be taken, you still got to take emergency police action. I've done it as a borough commander. John, Eric has mentioned it too. On my way home, I've seen his guys making a stop, and I stopped to see if they need any help, because you know what, I still feel like I'm a cop at heart, and if they're going to need help, I'm there to help them. I'm not sitting back to watch them to see if I can catch them doing something. There are bosses like that. We all know them, right? And that's just not what it's about. Okay. But now, as the boss, right, as the executives, here's an executive perspective for you. It's our job to also always, and again, we're still human, we're still cops at heart, but as executives, it's our job to not be tunnel visioned, to look at the big picture and make those hard decisions and give the direction that's needed to be given at the scene. So when you attain the rank of 2 stars, you have to have, you have to have that ability to switch gears, to switch gears, to be in control and give the proper direction. Again, I give him credit for being alerted to something by the sergeant, going to take police action because he feels he's a cop first, no matter what rank he is, and I agree with that statement. jumping the barrier, not just saying, hey, get him. He went into apprehension mode. Okay? But now once we're there, okay, he's aware that it's a device. And I'm going to show the video where he says it. And then we're going to look at what was going on after these devices were identified as devices. And this gets scarier again because of the harm's way that these officers are in. And like you said, what's the first thing you do? You call the issue, right? You call the issue. From afar, they look and they go, yep, that looks fucked up. Call the bomb squad in. Bomb squad comes in, does their thing. They're going to send the robot in. They're going to do what they're going to do. Get the robot to pick it up, put it in a containment vessel. Whatever they're going to do, right? That's their job. But what's your job? Get everybody the fuck out of there. As far away as possible. Because we don't know if there's a delayed device. We don't know if the fuse is a slow fuse because we saw the smoke coming out of it. We don't know. He's yelling Allah Akbar, and you're telling me that there's a device there. So let's take a look at that. Let me just, I gotta take these down. Let's take a look at what I'm talking about. Okay, right here at this point, there's that guy, like I said, with the legal jacket, right on the legs, right in there for the apprehension. Remembers he's a cop first, not just a legal advisor. Okay, but what do we hear immediately? Look at this crowd. Look, everybody's still coming. People are walking past, taking pictures of the device. That's the device right there. People are like, oh, what's that? What's that thing smoking on the ground? What is that right there? Let me lean in and take a look at it. Okay? And the rest of the crowd that's running down the street and circling around, wanting to take their pictures and their clicks and get on Instagram and get on this and get on that. Okay? So the chief is here. He's now in custody. Listen again. There's a device, there's a device, there's a device over there. The bells have gone off. He has identified a device. At this point, there can be no hesitation. This is where I see that the response is inadequate.
Hey, what's your name?
And of course, the crowd, what's your name? What's your name? Because this guy's a victim. He's a victim. The police are brutalizing him. What's your name? Do you have an emergency contact? And we're going to see on the second apprehension, he's the wrong guy. Fuck out of here.
I think both the gates have been or you hold that line out there.
Fuck you, motherfucker!
That's the bad part right there. Come on, Chief. Radio transmission. Come on. Why?
But if you hear what he's calling for ESU and the bomb squad.
Shouldn't be using his radio.
Well, I get that. I know the technicality, he's not supposed to be using his radio. I get that. But he's aware. My point is, at this point, he's been proactive. He's leading from the front. He's out there at the detail all day. We showed him before involved in the detail where we feel he should have brought in SRG and he could have legally justified brought in SRG and he didn't, which may have had a different outcome here if you had more control. Now after he's done what he's done, been a cop, the apprehension's made. He makes the connection that that's a fucking device. And he's meandering back and forth instead of clear the area. That should be the next thing out of his mouth. Once he makes that assertion that it is a device, everybody has to clear. You got to clear everybody out. Don't go near it. Don't go the other way. Everybody out. Everybody out. There's a device. He goes on the radio. He calls for ESU and the bomb squad. And this is where I'm being critical of Chief Edwards. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm being critical of him for using the radio. Well, first of all, yeah, absolutely, 100% get everybody out of the way. The second thing is he's queuing the radio up. I don't think they're intrinsically safe because I know that ESU had gotten a few of them, but they weren't throughout the department. The department just got new encrypted radios. And when I looked it up, they said they were encrypted, but they're not intrinsically safe. So what does that mean? That means it could also detonate something. Okay, you've identified one device. When there's one device, there's two devices. When there's a second device, there could be anybody in that crowd could be having a device on them, and you could be detonating them. So this is total disorder right there. It's not a controlled scene. All right, yeah, you want to get ESU there, and you want to get the bomb squad there as soon as possible. Absolutely, but let's be sure that we do everything the right way. And I'm sorry, that's not taking control of the scene at all. Okay. And here's the other thing. You could tell your driver, you could tell somebody else, go down the block, get me ESU and the bomb squad, and then start pushing people out of the way. All right. Move, get this, go back, So come on. So, I mean, and yeah, like Tom Joyce is saying, cellular radio, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, auto key fobs, garage door transmitters, all capable. Yeah, you could have anything, right? They have anything could detonate that. So I mean, and we spoke about the high volatility of TATP. So I mean, not that they know that's that,
Yeah,
but
they have no idea.
That's why they tell you don't do that with a bomb. That's why they tell you when you're going inside, if you're going to turn your flashlight on, turn it on before you go in. That's why they tell you don't go in and turn a switch on the wall to turn the lights on. So there's things that we're trained to do, and I hope they're still training us. But to me, that scene is chaotic, and what do you need with chaos? You need control, and there's no control.
And the control could have been in place earlier, is what we explained, and I think what we demonstrated. Okay, so now also another point. Okay, and I know that he's got a device identified. Now you have a perp. Like you said, if there's one bomb, there's two bombs. They don't even know at this point that this is the second bomb, that this is the second IED. If there's one, there's two. If there's two, there's three. Your words just now, right? Truer than it could be. Because he already threw one, then he threw the second one. Who's to say that he's not strapped up? Who's to say he doesn't have any other devices on him? He needs to be secured, and he needs to be, like, listen, if you remember back in, I think it was Los Angeles, where they had that massive shootout where the bank robbers or I don't know if they hit a bank robbery or if they hit an armored car, and the guys were Kevlared up from head to toe, and the cops were shooting the shit out of them, and they just couldn't get them to go down. But once they finally shot him and he went down, it was determined later on that he bled to death because they left him there until the bomb squad could come and clear him, right? Because they didn't want to approach because of the threat. So here, I don't think that they're understanding that he is still a threat. Now, you can't leave him laying on the ground handcuffed because he's going to get up, he's going to run away. But could you have secured him in the RMP, locked the RMP, and then wait, and then, I don't know, have bomb squad come and have bomb squad clear him? I don't know. Maybe I'm going a little too deep into it thinking that way. That's possible, but it's just an additional threat. Now they're giving him a quick cursory toss. There's the officer. I believe that did the open field tackle. He deserves to be on the football field, as well as being at the podium with the sergeant and the chief being heralded as someone who, you know, did something heroic, if you want to use those words, because like you said, he's the one that open field tackled this guy and stopped the threat. Okay, he stopped this threatening individual. Now, he didn't wind up having any more devices on him, but there was another device in the car, right? So if he got back to his car, there was another device. So stopping him from getting away is this cop doing what he needed to do. So yeah, so he's on his radio. We're taught you don't go on your radio within 1,000 feet of a device. Just like you said, I remember those trainings. Don't turn your flashlight on outside before you go in. When you go in, don't turn a light switch. Why? Because when you do that, there's the slightest arc on any switch. You see a little blue arc sometimes when you turn on your light switch. Till today, when we learned this 30 some odd years ago in the academy, they should still teach it, because now technology has changed so much with electricity and everything. I still hit the switch, and if it's dark, sometimes you see a little blue arc. So it's still there, and that could be an igniter, like you said. But here, he's identified a major threat, and I don't think that it's adequately being mitigated at that point.
So what I would have, and what we were taught in emergency service unit, is that guy would be still laying on the ground, and we would have taken control of his arms, pulled him out. He would have been spread out like that. And then the bomb squad would have came in and cleared him. Now, I don't know if they searched him or anything else, but that guy at that point, the bomb squad, usually what they'll do is they almost like strip the guy of his clothes. That's what you want to do. All right. Because I've seen it.
But he's not down. He's not going to be compliant.
Well, he should be down though, and he can be compliant. And fuck the diaphragm law and all that other stuff. That guy's going down. He's being held down. I don't give a crap what you got to do. All right. And then I've seen it, like I said, when I did the training in New Mexico with the AMFNO, I can't think of the name of it now, but a small little envelope like this big, like a regular envelope filled with info, and they detonated it, and it blew up this guy. It was a mannequin inside this office. It blew up the whole friggin' thing. So that guy could have anything on him. And I'm not trained to do that. The bomb squad's trained to do that. So hey, listen, could you have pulled him down the block and maybe spread him out? I guess you could have. Would I put him in the RMP? Absolutely not. I don't know what he has on him. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to put him in a vehicle that has gas and everything else, and that when that blows up everything else. But I would have definitely put him to a secure location and spread him out. But as far as the scene is, that scene's chaotic. It needed to have control. There was no control. So.
All right, let's watch the end of this real quick.
Guys, get out of the pen! Get out of the pen! Get out of the pen!
See, they're searching and touching him. The other thing is don't forget, people can have remote detonators, and somebody could have detonated it from far away. The third party could have said, "Oh, he's getting tossed by the police. Look at all the cops around him." Boom, press the button, and whatever's on him explodes, and then we have 4 dead cops. So they got to be careful with that. Once the chief said device, it should have been acted as such, and it wasn't. It wasn't with the scene. It wasn't with the perpetrator. Nothing.
So Joe Mango asked a question. Inspector, are the officers with legal on the back of their shirts and jackets also lawyers besides cops, or they just get training? No, they're lawyers. They're lawyers. They're members of the service. Usually they either have their law degree when they get on a job, or they're assigned to legal while they're going to law school, and then they work in the legal bureau, but they're still uniform members of the service.
Shout out to Lou Albano.
Oh, remember Lou?
Lou Albano, great guy.
Lieutenant Lou.
Yep.
All right. Modern Samurai, we'll read that later. Thank you very much, my friend. We appreciate you. Great supporter. We're going to read the chats at the end. We're going to try and get through this. Tom Joyce, saying exactly what you're saying: cellular radio, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, auto key fob, a garage door transmitter. They're all capable. So he's you know, exactly what you're saying. And then, you know, 92 Charlie, how come the street's not being cleared? Everybody's walking around aimlessly. And even when he's saying, guys, clear the pen, he's not saying why. He's not telling them clear the pen. The whole street needs to be cleared. Everything needs to be cleared. So let's look at, let me find it. Sorry. Did I delete it by accident? All right, give me a second.
Well, I think,
What else you got on that? Let me while I find this.
I was going to say, Detective Nolan makes a great point. Right now, the potential perps are salivating, right? We talked about this last time, remember? The guy with the rifle. Was this a dry run, you know? And,
Right.
you know, he says, watching these videos, knowing how the NYPD does not respond properly, 100%. And Housing for Life is going for pizza. So enjoy, brother.
Sorry, we'll be here when you get back, I'm sure. Rob likes the long ones.
Oh, yeah. I agree with Pete. I'm going with the 2-hour break from that one. So.
All right. So let's look at the apprehension of the second one, of the second perp who handed off the device and then heads back towards the original device where the original device was thrown.
Get Brick guy! It's a get Brick guy! He assaulted a police officer! He assaulted a police officer! He didn't throw the cocktail, but he punched the officer in the head.
Does someone have your emergency contact?
You saw that, bro? Take him this way, take him this way.
See, now the problem is they take him back to where the device is. You know, listen, kudos, community affairs, hands-on. Community affairs made that apprehension. You know, I guess they saw him fleeing down the street and they made, you know, they made that apprehension on the second perp. So again, they need to be heralded as well as making the apprehension of the second individual who handed him the IED, who's just as complicit.
Hey, the next agreement that they're going to make, they're going to take community affairs and tell them they're going to be red light, green light too, because they're the ones at the front line now. So,
but yeah, listen here. You know, we I don't want to say criticized, but we said how community affairs shouldn't be the first line of defense. We talk about no matter what your position is and no matter what your assignment is, you're a cop first. And that's important to remember. And here, I think that they showed it that they were acting as cops and taking police action. And they took that guy down to the ground. People, of course, the crowd, he's the wrong guy. Really? Winds up, he's the right guy. Oh, what's your emergency contact number? The typical liberal bullshit that they do at every protest because the police are abusing their authority. The police are victimizing and brutalizing everybody in the street at these First Amendment activities. All we're here to do is to our First Amendment right to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to throw bombs. Oh, I forgot that. I didn't read that when I read the Constitution back in high school. Well, I didn't go to high school too long, but you know. But let's look again at the aftermath. So now the chief is yelling, clear the pen. Guys, get out of the pen. He's not saying why. Maybe he doesn't want to cause complete pandemonium and alarm, but he's not saying why. And he's not saying to clear, he's not giving anybody in his close proximity instruction to clear everybody out. All that media, social media, influencers, whoever was there with a camera and a cell phone taking pictures of the arrest because they have to show how brutal the police are, how they took this guy down, they tackled him, and there's 5 of them on top of him, and the guy from legal's got his knee on the back, so now they're going to arrest him for fucking violating the fucking diaphragm law and all this other bullshit, right? Why aren't they being evacuated? And then let's secure the device. How does the device get secured? Let's take a look at that. Hold on. I got to take the other one down first. There's just so much today. Sorry. So there's the device, and you got cops securing the device, moving the barriers that were up along the curb, right? All those barriers were up along the curb because that's right where Chief Edwards, that we showed the video before, was lined up along the curb. The cops came and pulled the barriers back to make a zone of safety, I guess, around the device. This is the instruction that they're being given by I don't care what supervisor. They were directed to do that. Putting cops in harm's way by doing that. Whoever gave those directions, please reconsider. Look at this. Take this as a teaching moment. Go home and go, oh my God, there before the grace of God go I. The only winner here today is these cops that I said it in a post, I'll say it here, that these perps have no God in their soul, but God was present at the scene of this incident because he allowed all of these officers, all these civilians to walk away unscathed when this could have been such a tragedy. And I don't care if this is a few minutes later. I don't care if this is 20 minutes later. I don't know how long after it is. That device is still volatile. That is the device that they all saw smoking. That's a device that the chief identified as a device. And you have cops pulling the barrier away from the curb to keep people away from it? I don't know.
So
how do the cops don't even realize the danger that they're in?
It's a lack of training because look, conventional shrapnel, shards of metals, nails, ball bearings from a bomb generally travel at a speed up to and exceeding 1,000 kilometers per hour. Right, so it's an amazing blast. That now shrapnel kills. We see what it does to our poor military, right? When they step on an IED or they drive over an IED, if that had detonated, I don't care how far the barrier is, like in the middle of the street. Those guys would have been blasted with the shrapnel. That was, I mean, maybe they didn't know at the time, but we know now there was shrapnel in there, right? Tish tells us there was. That would have had devastating effect on those guys. So I mean, unbelievable.
Look what happened at the Boston Marathon. And they said that they wanted to do more carnage than the Boston Marathon. And it absolutely could have happened. And it's just whoever gave that instruction really needs to all these cops need to go home, kiss their wife, kiss their babies, and go to church during this Lenten season or whatever house of worship that they pray at, and say a special prayer of thanks that they went home. Because this could have been so horrible. Let's look at.
Wait, I want to say, or they should have all went down to Atlantic City and bet, because luck was on their side, man.
It's unbelievable. So listen, we're 2 hours, 35 minutes in. hit the like, share, subscribe, get the algorithm going. We're over 130,000 subscribers in the Finest Unfiltered Network. Thanks to all of you. We really appreciate that. But let's keep it going. You know,
That's funny.
yeah. Just listen, move the barriers. I mean, forget the barriers. Get the hell out of there. The barriers are not your safety zone. Distance is your safety zone, not a barrier. That metal barrier is not keeping anybody away. You need to keep everybody away. You need to clear that street, get everybody off, and everybody from a block to a block, somehow get into the building and evacuate the building if you can. At that point, hopefully there's a back entrance or whatever the case may be. But let's look at the first device. That was the second device on the main avenue. Let's look at the first device that was thrown. Allah Akbar over the guy's head into the middle of the street. Let's look at the aftermath of that device sitting in the crosswalk. Hands in the pocket. Let me look back. Wow, what is that? Oh, smile on my face. Oh, what is that in the middle of the street there? Oh, let's let the civilian come walk over and take a peek at it. Let me move a barrier or two. Oh, here comes some civilians. Let's not give them any instruction to get out of there. Here they come. Let me see. What's going on? What are you guys doing over there?
Like Eric said, like we've been taught, if you could see the bomb can see you. That's a standard rule, right? Military, law enforcement. You know what? You're putting yourself in for devastation. Why do you think that you explained how the ESU guys look at the bomb? They take out a pair of binoculars and
That's what I said before.
Oh shit, that's far away. You know.
And listen, I'm being sarcastic. I apologize for the sarcasm. It's my coping mechanism. You know, I'm infuriated by it. The lack of training, the lack of direction being given to these officers, the danger that they're being put in. It's our job. Well, it's the job of the supervision and the leadership to keep everybody safe. That's the number one thing. That's your number one job, is to keep your people safe. And it was an abysmal failure in my eyes, even though it's being touted as such a, you know, such a success. And it's just these things, and to watch these officers meander about, just, it's dangerous. People, go home and realize how lucky you are, reassess, and the job. Do something about the training. Train these officers better. Have them realize what when you say, oh, we're on heightened alert, tell them what heightened alert is. Tell them what their vigilance needs to be, what their situational awareness needs to be. Please.
Here's the thing: if it wasn't for this, our family, right? This podcast, the platform, John, Eric, Marlon, you know, Pete, Tom, yourself, and myself. If it wasn't for us calling it out, everything would look like it's you know, flowers and roses, and it's all great. Well, yeah, it can be. It can be. You can look at some of the stuff and say, oh, yeah, they acted appropriately, they did good, they made a good apprehension. But you have to look at the overall picture, right? We always talk about the totality of the circumstances. There's a lot of things in here that weren't good, and you need to be on your game, because this is only the first of what I suspect to be many, because right now we're a vulnerable city. Okay, because of the administration, because of the political leadership of the city, and every one of our cops need to be totally on their game and understand what could happen if things go bad, and understand that, you know, they need to take precautions immediately when they see something like this. So they need to step up themselves. And you're right. If the department doesn't and they don't criticize themselves well at all. The NYPD, they never do. But they need to at this time because, luck runs out, unfortunately, and we don't want to see any of our police officers, anybody in the NYPD, any civilians in the city of New York, anybody that comes to visit in the city of New York get hurt. So, I mean, and this goes for across the country too, because this is okay. This is in the city, but you know what? We've had terrorist attacks at different locations. Louisiana, right? An incident where the person drove up. There was a gap in the barriers and drove into the area of Louisiana where they have the parties and stuff, and just started running over people. So these things you have to step up and look and use your knowledge and your experience, your intuition. Like I always say, if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. So I think, like you have to be prepared for something like this, and I don't think you prepare by saying everything was great and we stopped the terrorist attack, because really they didn't stop a terrorist attack. They apprehended 2 terrorists. They did not stop a terrorist attack.
%. So, I chopped this from Marlon's. Marlon got this from NewsShare, and he titled this, "What could go wrong here?" I should have cut this whole tweet.
Yeah.
Like, look at this. These are the barriers that the cop was just moving backwards, right? A photographer leaning over. What are civilians? Hope for the civilians that are watching us out there. Please understand the danger. Was that picture worth your life? Because you're this close to losing your life for that picture. That lens looks like you could take a pretty good close-up from further away. Just saying.
Who's taking this picture too? There's 2 of them here. One guy.
Somebody taking a picture of somebody taking the picture. You're right.
Yeah. So why are they even there?
It's too much. All right. I think we brought out the points we wanted to bring out on that, but let's look at now, because we're 2 hours and 42 minutes in, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up and talk about the response by our illustrious Mayor Mamdani, his lack of leadership, his lack of guidance, his lack of acknowledgement of the situation, his absenteeism at the press conferences that he should have been at, and his initial statement, which to me is just disgusting. But let's look at Commissioner Tisch and her first initial press conference, and let me know what you think.
On a situation that occurred earlier today during protests outside of Gracie Mansion, from which footage of suspicious devices has been circulating on social media. The information that I am about to provide is preliminary and it is subject to change. At approximately 11 a.m., 2 separate demonstrations, a protest and a counter-protest, commenced in the area of East End Avenue and East 87th Street. The initial protest, called Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City, Stop New York City Public Muslim Prayer, organized by individuals associated with far-right provocateur Jake Lang, drew approximately 20 participants. The counter-protest, Run the Nazis Out of New York City, Stand Against Hate, took place nearby with roughly 125 participants at its peak. Both groups were separated into designated protest areas by NYPD officers. Shortly before noon, tensions escalated between individuals in the 2 groups. At 12:15 p.m., a protester associated with the Jake Lang group used pepper spray against counter-protesters and was arrested thereafter. At approximately 12:38 p.m., a counter-protester identified as Amir Balat, an 18-year-old man, lit and threw an ignited device toward the protest area, landing in the crosswalk of East 87th Street and East End Avenue. Witnesses reported seeing flames and smoke as it traveled through the air before it struck a barrier and extinguished itself a few feet from police officers. Mr. Balat then ran southbound on East End Avenue toward 86th Street and gets a second device from a man tentatively ID'd as Ibrahim Nick, 19 years old. Mr. Balat lights the device and starts running with it. He then drops the device on the west side of East End Avenue between East 86th and East 87th Streets. Officers immediately secured the area and they took both men into custody. This was all captured on NYPD Argus camera. The bomb squad responded and examined the devices. Based on preliminary examination and X-ray imaging, the devices, which were a bit smaller than a football, appear to be a jar wrapped in black tape, importantly with nuts, bolts, and screws, along with a hobby fuse that could be lit. At this time, we do not yet know whether the devices were functional improvised explosive devices or hoax devices, because we don't yet know if there was energetic material contained in them. Both recovered devices are being transported by the bomb squad in a total containment vessel to Rodman's Neck for further testing and analysis. Following the discovery of the devices, officers established a safety perimeter around the area and began a comprehensive search for any additional hazards. That includes canine sweeps as well as manual canvassing of the surrounding blocks, which includes inspections of garbage cans, underneath vehicles, and other locations where additional devices could potentially be hidden. These sweeps are still ongoing. In total, 6 arrests were made today in connection with the events. Those arrests include the 2 individuals responsible for handling and deploying the devices, the individual who used pepper spray earlier in the protest, and additional arrests related to disorderly conduct and obstructing traffic. This investigation remains active, and we will continue working to analyze the devices and to determine whether anyone else may have been involved. I have been in regular communication today with Mayor Mamdani about the situation. As of now, there is no indication that this is related to the ongoing hostilities in Iran, but the investigation is still ongoing given the heightened threat environment. Important to note, I always speak about the police running towards the danger when everyone else runs away. Let me be clear, that happened today. Officers, many of whom are here with me, ran toward a man carrying an ignited suspicious device. They put the safety of others and their sworn duty to protect and serve above their own personal safety. And I am grateful that there were no injuries associated with the incident. Today, as always, I thank our police for their noble service. Now I'll take a few questions. Hello. Do we know if they were home? I am not able to confirm if they were home or not. I believe they were not.
All right. So, I mean, they don't ask any important questions there. But listen, that's your normal initial press conference, right? You come up,
Is
you give
it?
basic details, but where's the mayor? How is the mayor? This was outside of his residence to boot. But it doesn't matter if it happened at the ass end of Staten Island or the up in the ass end of the Bronx, right? Or out in the Rockaways or anywhere else, any other corner of the city. You have 2 improvised explosive devices that are detonated and thrown at the police and crowds, and the mayor isn't standing at the press conference.
Well, first of all, I don't understand why Joe Galata was there, the chief
Yeah,
of transportation.
I don't know if he was.
So
the
that
duty
was just a
chief or-
show.
I don't know
a
what
show.
that was either.
All right. Where is the chief of department? Where is the chief of patrol? Where's the chief of special operations division?
Listen, I play devil's advocate that maybe the chief of department was away or on and he was named because whenever they go on vacation, they name one of the other chiefs as the acting whatever. But I don't know.
Still,
I don't know why Joe. I thought the same thing. Why is chief of transit there? I don't know if he was the duty chief, if he was acting chief of department for the day, and then LePetri raced back after it happened. But I don't know. I question that too. But
Well, it's a show. All it is a dog and pony show. And listen, I've had it done in the past where they want the big trucks behind the ESU truck. Put the ES truck behind us. Put the podium here. I think at one point they told one of the RMPs, the Radio Motor Patrol car, to shut the lights off because it was blinding the people. But and then my good friend Robert Murphy, I said, had they know, didn't they mention what was in the bombs, right? Didn't they mention that there was in the bombs?
She said that the bomb squad X-rated.
Yeah, that's how she knew. All right. So, yeah.
They said that the bomb squad X-rated. Couldn't tell if it was a viable device. That comes the next day.
Yeah, that's when they take it up to Rodman's neck and, open it or detonate it.
So let's look at that, right? So that press conference is your basic preliminary press conference given preliminary investigation. But again, why isn't the governor there? Why isn't the mayor there? The governor doesn't even tweet anything out until the next day. But why isn't the mayor there?
Well, where was
what you got going on?
Where was he? He wasn't home, right? They said he wasn't home.
He was in Brooklyn at the time, but it doesn't matter. Wherever you are,
he should have been there. Yeah.
Wherever you are, whatever happens ends. I don't care what event you're at. You leave. You take on the job of the mayor of the city. I'm the precinct commander. Something big happens. I got to leave my family. That's why I have a take-home car, right? I got to leave my family and I got to respond. That's a responsibility that I take on when I take on a position of authority at certain locations. If something happened big with emergency services, if they got involved in a shooting, right? Were you not responding or some other executive from the SOD responding? 100%.
Shooting, I was going in on barricades, so.
Right. If you're on a big job, you're going in. You're getting called in. So you're the mayor of the fucking city. This isn't a police-involved shooting, which is big enough that you should be there anyway. This isn't some other little incident. This is a terrorist attack. I don't care if you want to admit it or not. This was a terrorist attack. And it was important enough that you should have been there. So then at 1:20 p.m. on Saturday, so now 26 hours later, Tish confirms that the bomb squad has conducted a preliminary analysis of the device that was ignited and deployed at a protest yesterday and had determined that this was not a hoax device or a smoke bomb. It is, in fact, an improvised explosive device that could have caused serious injury or death. Further analysis will be conducted, including on the second device. Amir Balat and Ibrahim Khahoumi were arrested on the scene yesterday and are in custody in connection with the matter. The NYPD is working with investigators and our partners, U.S. Attorney's Office for Southern District of New York, the FBI, and Joint Terrorist Task Force. I want to again thank the brave members who ran towards danger without hesitation. Okay, great. That's good. You now, as the police commissioner, just through an X post, and I get it, that's today's day and age. You're going to reach more people probably than if you would have done a press conference, right? By putting out a Twitter. It's got 3.9 million views, right? So you were updating it. Again, why isn't the mayor? You're right. You didn't say anything last night for some reason. I want to figure it out and I want to get all the information and I've been in contact with my police commissioner and blah, blah, blah. Okay, but now that you find out the shit was real, get out, get your face in front of the camera instead of ducking from behind the doors where you're doing your TikTok videos. Hey, we're going to go out and we're going to have a meeting about rent control tonight. Come join us. See you there. Come on. Again, my sarcasm. That's my my way, my coping mechanism, right? Because it infuriates me that I have a mayor. I live here in New York City, and my mayor isn't out in front of this, right? So after the mayor has been in contact with the police commissioner, is made up aware of everything, is brought up to snuff, knows that this was a terrorist attack, knows at this point that we find out later, we saw it in the earlier press conference when I showed you, I showed you the press conference up front, but the press conference was actually on Tuesday. The statements made, right, that were captured on body-worn camera in the RMP, initially after the arrest, and right away, it is confirmed that this is an ISIS-inspired terrorist attack with confirmed IEDs that thankfully did not detonate properly because they were inept at making bombs. And yet, the mayor still doesn't come out in front of it. But hey, let's look, because 37 minutes later, he puts out his own post. So this is the first contact with the people of New York after learning that 2 Islamic extremists, whether they were self-radicalized, which it appears to be at this time, but we won't know until they really, the feds really get deep into their travel into Turkey and everything else, right? But it is confirmed that these are radicalized Islamic jihadists who are ISIS sympathizers who made homemade bombs that were viable bombs that they wanted to wreak havoc on the people of New York, the police department, and do more carnage than the Boston Marathon. He's aware of this. He's aware of all this information. What's his ex post? Yesterday, white supremacist Jake Lang, I kept calling him Jack, I guess Jake Lang, organized a protest outside Gracie Mansion, rooted in bigotry and racism. Such hate has no place in New York City. It's an affront to our city's values and the unity that defines who we are. What followed is even more disturbing. Violence at a protest is never acceptable. The attempt to use an explosive device and hurt others, give them boo-boos, is not only criminal, it's reprehensible and the antithesis of who we are. I want to thank the brave men and women of the New York City Police Department who acted quickly to keep New Yorkers safe. Our officers ran towards danger without hesitation, demonstrating once again the courage and dedication it takes. My administration is closely monitoring the situation. I remain in close contact with the police commissioner. Are you shitting me? You are aware of all of this information, and your first message to the people of the city of New York is that a white supremacist organized a protest, and then a couple of guys tried to hurt people.
Hey, listen, here's a guy that shouldn't even be the mayor, right? I mean, we've gone through that, but I just
we voted for him, right?
I want to address something.
Not we, but you get what you vote for, right? Elections have consequences, as everybody says.
Tom
and
Joyce
we are
is
seeing possibly deadly consequences here in New York City.
Tom Joyce is funny tonight. He goes, I once had an escaped prisoner from the 7-9 squad, and I went to the Ranger game. And then you got to see Reckoning Cage. That's hilarious. The way they walked up to the conference looked like the reenactment from The Wizard of Oz.
All right, but let's.
They did. They definitely look like that. That was freaking comical, man. And then I forget what Detective Nolan's funny too, because perhaps Mamdani was mentioned by perps during the interrogation. But yeah, this is the guy. He doesn't even deserve to be the mayor. So I mean, he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have the political experience. I mean, as much as you could say you hated Adams, right? But Adams was in the Senate, the state Senate. He was a borough, a borough president. So he did have some experience. Did he fall on his face? Absolutely. Why? Because he hired all his stupid crony friends and ruined his administration and was all filled with nepotism. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you would have expected anything more from Mamdani than what he gave you. And he filled his shoes exactly the way we thought he would with a terrorist attack. Because obviously, here's a guy who doesn't even have freaking security clearance to know what's going on. So
then the New York Post says Mamdani, because Mamdani on Monday morning, finally gets in front of a camera and has an initial press conference at 9:30 in the morning. And the New York Post puts out, Mamdani finally condemns ISIS-loving accused bomb throwers, but again, stopped short of calling it radical Islam. Really? I don't even, let's take a quick look, a brief look at this press conference and tell me if he's doing that. Tell me if he is, what they say, condemning ISIS-loving accused bomb throwers. Let's take a look.
This was a vile protest rooted in white supremacy entitled Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City.
Wait a minute. 2 bombs, ISIS-inspired, nuts and bolts, pledging their allegiance to ISIS, wanting to do more carnage than the Boston Marathon. He opens his press conference with the white supremacists again. Because that's the priority. That's the important part of what happened on Saturday.
I'm the first Muslim mayor of our city.
Okay, and?
Anti-Muslim bigotry is nothing new to me, nor is it anything new for the 1 million or so Muslim New Yorkers who know this city as our home.
Anti-Muslim bigotry did not throw 2 improvised explosive devices into a crowd and at police officers. 2 Islamic extremists with ISIS that were ISIS sympathizers and were radicalized admittedly by watching ISIS videos online, have traveled to Turkey, which will be followed up by the federal government to see if they were trained in some way with these bombs, because from what I understand, using this TATP is more in line with getting some overseas training instead of self-radicalization and watching things online, but that will be panned out later. But the carnage that could have happened was not from Islamophobia. It was from Islamic extremism. When are we going to fucking hear that?
While I found this protest appalling, I will not waver in my belief that it should be allowed to happen. Ours is a free society where the right to peaceful protest is sacred. It does not belong only to those we agree with. It belongs to everyone. I will defend that right every day that I am mayor, even when those protesting say things that I abhor. Let me also be clear about something else. New York City will never tolerate violence.
Oh, something else. Let me be clear about something else. We don't want bigotry. We're going to let people say the bad things because the people I support say bad things about the Jews. And, you know, I have to make sure that I keep supporting the pro-Palestine, you know, First Amendment activities by supporting the right to have a anti-Islamic First Amendment activity. So that's the important thing. Let's lead out with the importance on this press conference. And then, oh yeah, on another note, we're not going to tolerate violence.
Whether from protests or counter-protests. Many of the counter-protesters met this display of bigotry peacefully, with a vision of a city that is welcoming to all. But a few did not. 2 men, Amir Balat and Ibrahim Kayumi, traveled from Pennsylvania and attempted to bring violence to New York City. They are suspected of coming here to commit an act of terrorism. There is video of these 2 individuals throwing 2 devices towards the protest. The police department has determined that these were improvised explosive devices made to injure, maim, or worse. Thanks to the swift and decisive actions of NYPD officers at the scene, both men were immediately taken into custody, and the devices they brought taken off of our streets. I want to commend the officers who were on site.
Oh, I can't. I can't. Call it what it is. Call it what it is. You want to call him a white supremacist? That's fine. You want to say that, you know, Islamophobia is disgusting? That's fine. You want to condemn other things. That's fine. But let's call it what it is. These weren't two individuals that threw improvised explosive devices. These are two radicalized Muslims who threw them with their pledge to ISIS. What are your thoughts? Because my blood pressure is, I don't know if you can see how red my head is.
Years ago, and I wasn't really a big fan of him, John Miller, but he was smart. He knew what he was talking about. He brought up about a book. No, none of us even knew about, but it was, I think actually not a book. I'm sorry. I think it was an article in one of the magazines. It was "Make a Bomb in the Kitchen of Your Mom." So it was a jihadist technical communication and everyday practice of cooking. It literally showed the recipe to make bombs in your own kitchen. So here you have two radicalized individuals, ISIS inspired, and we're afraid to call them out because there may be some association of that they're both Muslims. So, I mean, ridiculous. I mean, just as we can call out white supremacists or people that, are not nice or whatever. I mean, we will call them out. But the fact is, you have to, as the mayor in the city of New York, there's a position of neutrality where you have to call out as what it is. People look for honesty. All right. And yeah, maybe because of what his wife tweeted, relative to October 7th, supporting it. And he claims, but she's not a politician. She's just a regular citizen. All right, we get it. But you're the mayor of New York. You're responsible for every religious group there, every ethnic, sexual preference, everything. So you need to start standing up as such. But we can see he only cares about himself. That's all it is.
And let's look at our illustrious governor. Let's look at what she has to say. Oh no, well, Mamdani has one more things to say, right? That Amir Balat and Ibrahim Kahim have been charged with committing a heinous act of terrorism and proclaiming their allegiance to ISIS. They should be held fully accountable for their actions. We'll continue to keep New Yorkers safe. We'll not tolerate terrorism or violence in the city. He wrote more about the white supremacists in his first tweet. Give me a break. But let's look at the governor. See what she has to say. So again, is that the first one? So as the investigation continues into the terrorist attack near Gracie Mansion and military action in Iran continue, New York State remains in a heightened environment. Here's how we're protecting it. Yeah, we're sending cops out there and blah, 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 blah. Then she doesn't get in front of a camera. She doesn't come down to the city, right? Because it doesn't benefit her because her and her boy can't get together in front of the camera. Then in response to the press conference, I think I had these out of order. I'm sorry. I've been briefed on today's incident outside Gracie Mansion. I'm grateful there's no reported injuries. New York respects the rights to peaceful protest. We have zero tolerance for hate or violence. Again, can we call it what it is? After it's established that they're terrorists, ISIS sympathizers, the bombs were real, incredibly grateful for New York's finest who ran towards danger yesterday to protect us. There's no place for violence of any kind in our state, and those responsible for this cowardly act will be held accountable. State police continue to assist the NYPD in the investigation as part of the Joint Terrorism Task Force. But why aren't we calling it out? Why aren't you talking about the terrorist attack in New York City, in your state, Governor? The terrorist attack. Losing my mind. And we're late. We're over 3 hours, Rob.
Yeah, I know. It's an election year. You got to remember that for Kathy Hochul. So
And has Tish James said anything yet? No, absolutely not. Hasn't said anything. She got nothing to say. Who cares what she has to say anyway? Another loser. Espo and Animo, both honorable men. Just to follow up on that, Detective Nolan, keep your eyes out in a couple weeks. Chief Anamone, retired Chief of Department Anamone. It's going to be on the 10-4 Tavern. Special guest. That's going to be a great show. All right. So now, what do we discuss? And what are we going to do moving forward? We've talked about how the police hands are tied by this agreement that was signed by Eric Adams, Caban. Now, listen, we have to live with it for now, but they got to get together. The litigators, the legislature has to get together and say, listen, it's just not working. Look at what we're dealing with. It's because, like you said, this isn't the last one. It's going to happen. It's going to keep happening. And we have to have control, because we don't have control right now of our streets. We need control of our streets. We've shown through even the protest settlement agreement how the commanders in the field do have the ability to articulate the use of the proper resources. And in this instance, I think we proved that it was necessary and wasn't done. So moving forward, I'm going to go back to Commissioner Tish's press conference. And like you said, was there more? This is the Q&A. At the very end, when they asked about SRG, and then they asked, in light of this incident, should we reevaluate how we police First Amendment activities going forward? And let's see what Commissioner Tish, who I know is up against a lot, she's been pushing back a lot on the mayor in support of the police. We've got issues with her in other ways, administratively, disciplinary, and and so forth that we've discussed in the past. But she has been showing support for the police, and she has been pushing back against the mayor. How long she's going to last, I don't know. And she has called this for what it is, in opposition of our mayor. But let's listen to her answers in regards to the response, the deployment, and future deployments of NYPD personnel in First Amendment activities.
Answer the question about SRG. SRG was in the area of the protest. They were there on in a backup capacity. We often have SRG around in an area if we think that it has the potential to get heated, so they were there. They were brought in after mayhem, as soon as mayhem ensued.
How do you make that assessment? We got to keep moving, Rocco. Apologies. Well, just a quick follow-up. How do you make that assessment?
Our commanders on the ground will make the assessment about when to call in SRG.
There you go. She obviously read the settlement agreement. The commanders on the ground will make the assessment when to call in SRG. Our perspective, our contention is that it was justified and it wasn't done, and it led to more chaos. Listen to, I find it interesting how uncomfortable she gets when she's answering the next question, and she's a little flustered, which she's normally not.
But certainly with this protest, we did have SRG on standby and prepared because we thought it had the ability to get interesting.
It had the ability to get interesting. Just confirmed what we all knew already from things that were posted online. Even, online and Twitter news reporters, right? They've been reporting it. They've been reporting it. They've been saying there's going to be problems. This guy's going to be a problem. You know, viral news, New York City. He reported it. He said it out there. I've been following these people, and this guy Jake Lang is going to be a problem, and there's going to be violence. They knew it. They had this intelligence, and I'm sure they had a lot more intelligence than was being just put out on Twitter and everything else. And they didn't properly prepare. And I think she knows that by that hesitant response. And again, so she's admitting to prior knowledge of it getting interesting. In other words, we knew there was going to be violence. Not this. Obviously, I'm not saying that they knew anything about this IED, but the fact that this protest was going to be violent and have clashes, it should have been policed differently, and that the police commanders on the scene in the field can make the call when to call in SRG, and they didn't.
Given who was there.
Thank you. Thank you. Marina? Sorry.
You got it. Commissioner, Joe Marino, New York Post. Commissioner, are you looking at changing your posture towards policing protests, given the fact these two individuals were not known to you? And is it causing you to reassess like additional resources you may need from an intelligence or patrol standpoint?
So as you know, the NYPD remains on heightened alert. We really have been on heightened alert since the hostilities in Iran broke out about 1 week ago, which means extra counterterrorism deployments, heavy weapons teams, drones, aviation. This department, in particular, our intelligence and counterterrorism unit and teams have been out there in full force for the past week, as they are anytime something happens either in the city or around the world that we feel we need to deploy for. Look, this incident did occur at a protest, but it didn't have to have occurred at a protest. So this doesn't change our posture specifically on protests. The NYPD has been policing protests and ensuring New Yorkers' ability to exercise their First Amendment rights safely and lawfully for decades, but never more so, frankly, than over the past 2.5 years, where we have just seen a huge increase in the number of protests, and our officers, both our community affairs officers, our patrol officers, and our SRG officers are well trained and certainly well practiced at doing so.
Yeah. Your SRG are. I think your patrol officers showed that they're not, and they need more training, because they could not handle what wasn't the most violent of crowds and was just a little bit disorderly. You frozen there?
No. You asked me a question, or?
No.
Oh.
Just saying, SRG is the ones that are she's saying that patrol, everybody is properly trained, and that they're not going to change anything going forward. All right, Modern Samurai, thank you again. Another hit. We'll read that at the end. Appreciate you for being there. Really unfair that we are speaking about Muslims like this. We're not speaking about Muslims like this. We're talking about two radicalized individuals who are ISIS sympathizers that tried to blow up the police and the citizens of New York. And a Muslim mayor who's refusing to call it what it is. We are by no means speaking about all Muslims. Rob's in deep thought.
I don't think we mentioned anything about specifically Muslims. That was mentioned on the news conference and things like that. We're talking about a terrorist attack. I don't really, throwing bombs. Who cares what religion or whatever they believe? That's and they themselves admitted they were ISIS inspired. So be it.
Okay. Have a good day. Your comments are unwarranted, and if you use your ears and you listen to what we're saying, we haven't said anything like that. So you have the free right and the First Amendment right to hear what you want also. So all right. I think we've covered it. And anything else, Rob?
No, I think we covered it.
Tom, I don't know who you have on next week. But so tomorrow, let me get rid of that. Sorry. Tomorrow, I'm sorry, on Friday, you have New York's Finest Retired and Unfiltered podcast with John, Eric, and Marlon for the Friday roundtable. And they will be absolutely covering this topic and going a little bit deeper. And so I got you, Tom. And then they'll be back again on Monday, following up on anything that's going on in the city, within local politics, and also in the NYPD. And I'm sure covering any updates on this ongoing event. Tuesday at 19:05, Pete Faselli and Tommy Joyce will be back at the 10-4 Tavern. You have to go back and watch last night's episode. Last night's episode was phenomenal with the legendary Gentleman Jack Cambria, 14 years as the hostage negotiations team commanding officer. Spent, I believe, 15 years, Rob?
14, I think. But
14 years in the emergency services unit as well?
I thought he was 14 years as the commanding officer.
Oh, yeah, he was 14 years as the CO of HNT, but he also was in emergency services.
Yeah, but he went back. He was a cop, a sergeant, lieutenant,
and lieutenant in emergency services before they picked him up for hostage negotiations. And listen, he loved being an E-man and was hesitant to take the role, but I think he proved that it was the best thing for him. It was the best thing for this job and for this country, because now he's going around the country and he's teaching hostage negotiation skills. He was only able to, in 2.5 hours, which Pete was thrilled about, talk about a little bit of his career and only touch on certain cases. Fascinating to listen to. Such a gentleman. Go back, watch that recorded episode. It's one of the most watched episodes 10-4 Tavern has so far. So let's get back and watch that again on the repeat. Next week, they will have Detective First Grade Wendell Stafford, formerly of the Cold Case Squad, where he worked with Tommy Joyce, I'm sure, where they've brought closure to many families, going back and, closing out these cases that people have sometimes forgotten about. Then we'll be back next Wednesday at 5:05 p.m. for the next episode 56 of the Executive Perspective. So until then, everybody, thank you. Stay safe.